somebody could take that the Rebbe was unpleasable no matter what you did.
Right.
He never said thank you. And the Rebbe said clearly, and you could take that. The Rebbe was demanding. The Rebbe was saying, I believe more. I'll take it a step further. You could look at it like you just got $100. And I believe that Rebbe was saying, I hope you don't feel like you're doing me a favor, doing God a favor. I hope you feel like you just found a treasure. Because if you do, you're going to want more of it.
Welcome to Homesick for Lubavitch, a podcast where we explore Lubavitch identity in the year 2025. My name is Bosi Lgani, and I will be your host. Let's begin. Alrighty, we are here for a late night jam with esteemed friend Velvel Lipskier, resident of North Miami Beach. Currently, can we say what you do currently? Everybody knows
Construction. Yeah.
Construction. I even dressed the part for the construction interview, but you had to one up me with your white shirt. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have my green yarmulke.
Green yarmulke. All right. So you asked how we start. Let's start a little bit off the cuff. What's something you learned on Shabas?
What's something I learned on Shabas? I learned to look at the Torah. I'm trying to remember. I only learned a very, very small piece. Oh my gosh. Afternoon. Yeah, in the afternoon I learned a Maimer from the Friedrich Rebbe, from Business Dafresh Tzaddik.
You told me Ani Yeshena?
Yeah, Ani Yeshena, thank you. And then there's a Bir al Anal. And the next one, I don't remember the Bra Maschel. And it was very, very heavy Maimer, the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer. The Maimer itself is in Yiddish, Kontresem Aleph. I think Sefer Maimer Dafresh Tzaddik was not printed yet.
No.
I looked. And
where was the Friedrich Rebbe then? In Lithuania?
Dafresh Tzaddik, Beis Nissen, probably would have been in Riga, yeah.
That's the Latvia. Yeah. No, because it says in the contrasting, like each section of my arm's in a different place.
Yeah, where it was. I didn't look. I'm just trying to go off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, because I'm asking because... Anyways, go ahead. Say what you were...
Yeah. So, what caught me right away is Lilmud Barabim, the business, and like the Friedrich Rebbe gave it out. Like, I want you to learn this for
the art site.
For the art site. That, I don't know, just struck me like I was talking to somebody on Thursday night about the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimorim, and he mentioned to me, a friend of mine, he said there's a certain, I'm going to express myself very grub over here. I'm sorry. Like there's a certain, use the word warmth, there's a certain kiruv. I heard a story, which I just want to give that preface. 2 stories. I want to give a Hagdama Klalis. I'm discovering more and more that my memory is very inaccurate. I used to rely on my memory a lot. And I see that I remember things. So I'm going to say something and somebody's going to shoot my head off and say it never happened that way. Then you're right. If I misremember, I misremember.
Yeah.
So anything I say is not fact at all.
Yeah.
But I heard a story once that the Friedrich Rebbe was once crying b'koil. And somebody came in and the family was there, the Alter Rebbetzin and the Friedrich Rebbe's daughters, and he said, like, what happened? And she said, don't worry, this is normal. And conversely, the Friedrich Rebbe used to laugh. He used to laugh b'koil also. But the Rebbe, he didn't see that at all.
Right.
I believe I once heard on a tape the Rebbe laughing. I was shocked, like laughing b'koil. And crying b'koil also almost never. You have a drop in Bosi Lgani Aleph. But there was the famous Zuntigesuch, Mantigesuch, I don't remember when that verbringen is. But about the Yidden in Russia. But crying b'koil was almost never. But by the Friedrich Rebbe, you see in the letters, he did nafshi, he did the ois, etc. So there's a certain kiruv. And I came across in the Maimed also, like he's, you did a berei. And this is what I want you to learn. This is what I want you to take in. And the Maimed was a very Valama Maimed. It was very, very simple. It was in Yiddish, so it was Ani Yeshena V'Libier. and the avodah of just a regular balabas. And I mentioned to you when we spoke, what does the Friedrich Rebbe talk about? Basic stuff. Davening, being careful about basic things, being careful about staka. And then there's the biur, which was much more familiar territory. We say he talks about Sur Levavi, and the Ebershter is the Leiv Shekolach Becha. Then there's a whole arichas over there, Vayinu Kachalmem, which is a classic idea in Chassidus, with that when a person chalams, and he talks about Yishena V'li what it means to be asleep and not aware, but the neshama is always awake. So I was talking to a friend of mine about the Maimer, and he asked me a question. He comes from the Lubavitch family and learned yeshivas, and something came up which was very fascinating. And I was thinking about it before we spoke. So we were talking about Tanya, and he asked me, like, what is Tanya like? And I told him, actually, I have no idea. I have no idea what Tanya is, no idea what Chassidus is, because, there's the expression, a fish has no idea what water is.
Right.
So, as much as I have quite a few friends in other kreisen, Chassidus, Litvisha, and I like to read other things, but it's very hard to look at it without what is classic Yiddishkeit without Chassidus or Chassidus Chabad. See, right. I have no idea. I could read about it, I could hear about it, I could talk to people, I could try to ask them, and I like to ask, like, what is it like for you? What is...
Yeah, the Friedrich Rebbe said once, said, Amal, they used to say Ayid a Chassid, and now they say a Chassid Ayid. Like, at some point, the framing flips.
Yeah, I think it's easier for me to understand what it means to be a Yid, I guess, than what it is to be a Chassid, in the sense that I guess there's more non-Jews around.
Just move it so that the camera doesn't see all this.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No problem.
So, I guess you could see.
Put it in your pocket.
But
people can see the floor. Put it in your pocket.
Huh?
Put it in your pocket.
Okay.
The bottle can see on the table. All right. I don't know.
So it's very hard to say. It's very hard to say the Friedrich Rebbe. But anyway, yeah. So that's
very hard to say
we
what
did on Shabas. What exactly Chassidus brings to the table? Because I don't know anything else. I don't know any other relationship with the Ebershter. I don't know any other relationship with Terem Mitzvahs. I don't know any other relationship with Avos Yisrael.
Why is it important to know that?
I was just contemplating. It's not important at all.
No, I'm saying,
what prompted that?
No, because let's tease it out a little bit more. Let's say you don't know. Let's say you're not Lubavitcher. You're just a regular Jew. Let's say, or no Jew's regular. Everybody has their own particular thing. But let's say we can generalize. You're a Yid. You don't know what it means to not be a Yid. So maybe there's always that question.
Well, it's easier. In other words, if somebody wants to, I mean, this is hypothetical. If somebody wants to leave Yiddishkeit, you can leave Yiddishkeit.
Right.
Okay.
And
drop Torah mitzvahs and join the secular world. It may take him a couple of years till he gets used to it, but that's it. But if somebody theoretically would want to be a Frum Yid and strip away Chassidus Chabad specifically, like, what would that look like exactly? Okay, I guess you can stop learning Chassidus and change start putting that film backwards,
I mean, you would lose them. You're saying because it's an idea? Yiddishkeit's also an idea.
Yeah, true. But it's not just an idea, it's an approach. But I believe, I don't know. I mean, this is really a pilpush level, so.
Okay.
It's not.
No,
I was contemplating.
No, because I think it speaks to...
Well, ideas are ideas.
No, because I think it speaks to a lot of people are looking for a sense of ownership, that this is my choice, or this is my Yiddishkeit, this is my Chassidus, this is my...
So Chassidus is easier. Chassidus is easier to understand, because Amayim Chassidus.
Or being a Chassid. That's what you're talking about.
I'm talking about being a Chassid.
Right, so people want
people
want that to be theirs, and the question is, can it be yours without mamish dropping everything and starting from scratch? There is an allure of the Baal Tshuva or the Sukus that he chose it, and he knows why he chose it, and he knows that there's a before and after point, whereas we are all kind of stuck, like you said, we're like fish in water, and so we don't know where the edge of it is. And it's like, you chose it really? You don't know anything else. Of course, you chose.
I'm going a little further. I'm
that's
going
why
a
I think
little further.
Okay.
I'm going a little further. Let's say, for example, the relationship of Torah mitzvahs, or what is a yid like without Torah mitzvahs? So we're very clear. We were raised a very specific way that a yid is a chilek l'chama mamish, a yid is a neshama.
Right.
That's number one, and number two, the Eibishter gives neshamas Torah mitzvahs, or the way you would explain it to somebody who is not Shem Torah mitzvahs, you explain to them that the Torah mitzvahs is there to enhance the relationship that's already there. There are people who they think of a yid who's not Shem Torah mitzvahs as a goy, and they'll use that word.
Right.
What does that even mean? So what is a yid to you? Like, I don't know. So that would never change. Like, even if I start davening Nusach Ashkenaz and put my tefillin backwards, that would never change. I can't leave that idea. I don't know of any other way to look at a yid. What I'm going to go say, no, okay, a yid is only Torah mitzvahs and that's it. Like, we're going to adopt another ideology.
Why not?
I think you can't unsee something that you've seen.
Okay. So,
or the relationship to the Eibishter, or the relationship to Chassidus.
I mean, what it sounds like you're saying is that on some level,
it wouldn't make any sense to me. In other words,
and it would make sense to not be from a yid.
Well, you could drop everything and.
Right. So the way you're framing it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that being a from a yid or being a yid in general is a lot more like what's called makif.
No.
Like no, but makif in the sense of like
no.
Mamish.
It's much more concrete.
Like practical.
It's
yes or no, binary, in or out.
Yeah, I guess so.
In or out.
Yeah.
Whereas Chassidus Chabad in your mind is ideas.
It's not just ideas. Ideas is like philosophies. It's like philosophies you either buy into or you don't buy into. That's not. We're going to say, okay, maybe there's 11 spheres. So I don't buy into the 10 spheres.
So what do you mean?
I mean that I'm not sure was hat Chassidus aufgetan when I cannot imagine life without it. And that's not to say that there is no life without it.
I see what you're saying. Look, I'll tell you something.
In other words, if you talk to somebody who came from outside the Lubavitch, before I came to Chassidus, I thought,
and
I hear the stories.
There's no before and after. Before and after. And look, I think it's probably similar to some people will be like, there's a certain thrill of a person who comes from nothing and makes a fortune,
right,
compared to the child who's born into riches and doesn't understand what they have and doesn't understand what the
started with a small
right,
$1 million.
No, they're losing. They'll never ever taste that sense of accomplishment because there isn't the before. And even by the way,
even if they became very wealthy,
even if they build on it, there's that inflection point of there was a time when there was a no and now there's a yes. That binary is not there.
Right.
Look, it's interesting the way you're talking. I don't know if it's the same Nakuda, but I think it's similar. Eli Leib-Rubin, who we were speaking about earlier, I was on the podcast, a good friend of mine. So he recommended to me to buy a book that just came out by Chaim Grade. I don't know if you saw that, Sons and Daughters. No. So it was a novel that he was writing in serial, meaning he was publishing in the newsletter or in the newspapers. I don't think he ever finished it. I didn't get to the end, but from what I understand, the book was never really finished. I don't know, 50, 70 pages in or something. It's a very interesting shtickle there, which I think you'll appreciate when I get to this. The book revolves, at least the beginning, of this Rav in some town, I forget the name of the town, some shtetl, who basically is constant, perpetual suffering. His eldest son has moved to Switzerland and lives with God knows who, and has a child with God knows who. His next son is living in some more sophisticated town, Bialystok, and is his whole family is, and there's this very poignant scene where this Rav goes to another Rav in another shtetl, and is trying to figure out how did you manage to raise your kids frum, that you have no money, you have nothing to offer them begashmias, and yet they're all ready to live this life of sacrifice and Yiddishkeit. And he's thinking, and the Rav gives him one answer and another answer, and it doesn't satisfy him. Finally, that other Rav makes a throwaway comment that, my wife and I, both of us, our parents were workers. We come from a working class Yiddishkeit, and I became a Rav, and she married me. And he said, okay, that's what it is. That's what it is. And there's this very, very powerful line, and it hit me. He's like, maybe my family is operating under too much weight of history. There's too much generations of Torah. It's too heavy. I can't hold it anymore. My kids they're running away. Whereas this guy, it's all fresh. It's pioneering. It's fresh. It's light. It's not light that it's.
Okay, that's a very pessimistic.
No, but I think it's relevant in the sense
it's relevant in the sense that it's erlebt and it's frisch because it's no. I wasn't talking about Chassidus being stale. I want to be very clear about that.
No, I don't mean it that way. I meant that like there is a challenge of, and I'm not saying that this guy's point or Chaim Gad in general is quite cynical towards it, right? Yeah. But it's more, there is a challenge that comes with like at some point that kind of ecstatic chachma moment of yesh miyayin of Chassidus, of that change from going from nothing to something, that moment, it's 8 generations back, and like, is it really mine, or am I just going along with it?
No, I don't.
That's not what you mean?
No. That's not what I mean.
You're saying earlier that this mimer was talking about Pashta Zachin.
Well, it wasn't the Pashta Zachin. It was Pashta Zachin too. There was 2 parts to the mimer.
Okay.
There's 2 parts to the mimer. There's the first part, Zan Yisheno, and the I can't remember the second Tibana Maskell. It's escaping me for some reason. So I'm psukim over there. The first part was more, it was in Yiddish, it was very, very avoided, very practical. The second part was more, Chassidus, more the Rebbe style, my modern.
It's not called the medallic al
No, it was not called the Difik. No, I don't believe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I don't think it's called the Difik. Yeah, so
it's very interesting. The Friedrich Rebbe's Chassidus, a lot of it is, like especially in Kontresim. I mean, really Kontresim has different sides to it, but there are a lot of Maimer Kontresim where, it's like you're learning a Maimer, and suddenly he's talking about Taras Mishpacha and like. So,
there was a long arichis over there, by the way, about
who's he talking to? Is he talking to Lubavitch, or is he talking to Sikh teens? Like who's the crowd?
Right.
And it's interesting. There's a mimer.
Well, historically, it was very challenging at that time.
Yeah,
etc.
Yeah, so there was a very interesting thing there where there's a mimer Nasan Ali Eskir.
Right.
And there's a very interesting. I'm forgetting it now because like you as well, I trust my memory less and less. But there was a Yoman that Chacha Fagan wrote around the time of that trip. It was in Lithuania, and you can see the crowd. He was talking to the whole few days that he was there he was up against a very varmik crowd personally, but also a crowd that was in a state of flux, like Yiddishkeit wise, like modern and there was a certain. And it's just there's something about these Maimarim that they could start at very high ideas. It's a Maimer at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And what's it about? It's about.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a thought that I had a lot of times over the years. Is that in some ways, I'm not comparing, but in some ways there's a strong parallel today.
Right.
We have a generation of Lubavitchers who are very, very vadim, have a strong sense of connection, almost like when the Friedrich Rebbe came to America.
Right.
It was from Gezach Sidim. And that didn't come up in the one with that you had with Mendel Luchman in defense of Gesha.
Right.
Like people, where that term comes from, it comes from the Friedrich Rebbe. It's not something that people made up. People come from Gezach Sidim, and people have a strong.
Sorry, that was in defense of Gesha, not Geza.
I understand.
It's 2 different things.
Yeah, I get it. But people who come from Gezach Sidim are very proud of it, very strongly proud of it.
Right.
And identify with it. And the approach then wasn't to crack down, and you took Bedford and Dean, etc., for example, which some classes had 2 or 3 Lubavitchers in the whole class.
I literally interviewed a guy today.
Yeah, I saw.
Crazy story.
I used to meet all the time in Talucha and Borough Park, I went to Bedford, I went to Gan Yisrael, and it's aufgeheben and warmed them up to the point that they raised the whole generation from nothing.
But not Lubavitchers.
Some
of them,
both,
yeah.
Both.
No, but this guy, for example, was
this guy was from Eid. But take kids like I would just take example the Hechts, which are really like a.
That was before Bedford and Dean, right?
Yeah, before Bedford and Dean. That's just like a caricature, so I'm using that. It's a stereotype. But just took kids and inspired them and picked them up and turned them into something without any rules at all, cracking down. I'll tell you a story without names. But we were sitting once and there was people that are involved in the chinuch, and there was discussion on the internet. So this is going back at least 15 years ago, maybe more. And there was somebody who shared a story about the radio. He came not from Lubavitch, he came from Satmar. So I hope I'm not giving away too much identifying information. And take that out, okay? I'm just going to go back. He came from other Kreisen. And he was not raised in Lubavitch. He was raised in another Kreis. And over there's a strong campaign against the radio. And he says and the kids came home, and one at a time they all threw out their radios. And we lived without it. And the radio was a very, very big deal. Yeah. When he came to Lubavitch, he said that his mother was like, Lubavitch, they have radios. They do some krank gemacht to throw out the radio. All right, shine. And he said, and I didn't think of it at the time, but shortly afterwards I was thinking about, hey, your malamed, your mashpim, whatever, people who were being madrich, you thought the radio was a terrible thing. So they inspired you to get rid of your radios. They didn't legislate. They didn't say, okay, no radios. They said, if I bring this to you, they told you how terrible radio is and you have to throw it out. And each one of you went home and threw out your radios. Kanos and not kanos, that's not the point. The point is that they inspired you to do something. They didn't make rules against the radio. So I'm not going into the internet, and over the last 15 years we thought, things, it's not the specifics of that. I mean, that's what happened to be the discussion about at the time. And there's many differences between the radio and the internet, etc. As miles chassidus,
right,
or televisions and these things. There were inspiration campaigns that went on, and I think in that way, in the 1940s or 1930s, even maybe Saul Jacobson was here in the 20s, that he was able to take a generation that was inspired. They were literally Libier. People were awake and inspired, and work with that. And there's a lot to work with because people feel very, very connected. And there's a lot to work with.
Spring is here, which means that in 2 months, many communities will be looking for a way to mark Gimel Tammuz, the Rebbe's yahrzeit. If you're looking for an event that is memorable, meaningful, and affordable, let me recommend This World is a Garden, a film and live concert production created by us here at Yuvla Media, inspired by Bosi Lgani, the first mimer, the Rebbe said. If you're a regular here at HFL, you know that Bosi Lgani is something that we think about and talk about a lot. And in this production, we use the power of cinematic filmmaking and a live concert by a string quartet to bring the beauty of Bosi Lgani to your community and your audience in a way that they've never seen, heard, or experienced it before. The production has already been hosted by Chabad houses around the country and has drawn wonderful reviews. Our package comes with everything that you need to put in the production: the film's original arrangements for string quartet, publicity materials, everything besides the string quartet, which we recommend that you hire locally to save on travel costs. To find out more about this production, please visit thisworldisagarden.com. Again, thisworldisagarden.com. And now, back to the show. But that goes back to that point in a way of that paradox almost, or that problem that Chaim Grad was pointing to. What do I mean by that? At that time, you are in such a state of there's only upside, right? You saw Jacobson in America, what does he have to lose? There's no Lubavitch institution with if we're lax, God forbid, the kids are going to slip. There is no institution. There are no kids. There's a handful of kids. We only have upside. I mean, of course, there's always a bit of downside, but the upside is so much bigger than the downside because you're we can't stay this way. We're too small. We're too weak. Our numbers are tiny. We have to, right? And the Rebbe took that even to a much further thing, where it's not just to build up our community; it's to change the world. But it's like the story that still rings with, like, one of the most powerful anecdotes from all my interviews of this podcast was the one that Rabbi Nu shared with his aide Kluvgant in Australia, right? And he wasn't even mentioning it to bring up a point, but there was something powerful about, here's this chassid from Russia, from the old world. He sees his grandkids growing up from Yidden, but not Minhag Lubavitch, not Kibbutz Chol Yisrael, and so on. He keeps his mouth shut. Like, there's something about, like, I'm not in a position now, and I'm reading into it, of course, here, but I'm not in a position now to come, Mamai Lamata insist. I have to. It's a thing of care of, like, I have to. Like, we're lucky to be alive. We're lucky to have Yiddish grandkids. I'm not here to. There's no. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, and now we're in this place where there's the weight of, like, what if, God forbid, when we make the wrong choice and the kids that are supposedly doing well, they slip. God forbid. So everyone is so much. So
there's also there's the law
people
of
are cautious.
There's the law of Prusbul.
Right.
The law of Prusbul says that it became impractical. So. I'll say B'Shem Rebbe, Dennis Prager makes a point that humans are very, very kind to each other in small groups and very cruel to each other in large groups.
Yeah.
And basically, you don't go to war with somebody you know.
Right.
And when the Torah says not to take ribis, it means kipshutai. Don't take ribis, like you wouldn't take ribis from your brother.
Right. No, he uses that word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And literally, when a person wouldn't take it, it's normal imagine if one brother charged interest on another. I don't care what it was for a deal, not for a deal. And his father would call us from sugar, then brother, they were treating him like that. And it was reasonable, acceptable, and it worked. And it works. And today, if a close friend of mine asked me for alva, or asked a close friend of mine, of course, it would go without saying. But once the group becomes large, the rules of the game change, and they cannot work. The small rules can't work.
It doesn't scale. And
that the Prusbul actually benefited, Prusbul, Hateriska, all these things, they benefit the Leiva. They don't even benefit the Malva.
Right. The economy came to standstill. People couldn't get money, couldn't get loans.
So there is a certain thing, things don't scale. They just don't scale. And what works in small groups doesn't work necessarily in large groups. So that's true.
So you're approaching it from another problem. Maybe they're related. There's something about, I agree with that 100%. Is that when you're smaller, there's space for organic connections, and as it gets bigger, things become a lot more corporatized and systemized, just to allow it to function. There's way more regulation just to allow this behemoth to keep on moving. And it's like, another Shem Emre, like Barack Obama's big chachma was that, like, changing the U.S. government is like turning around a battleship in a bathtub. You can't. You can maybe move it an inch. Right. Like, that's a big vart to the president, just to move the ship an inch, and then eventually it'll make a difference. Yeah. And there is a bit of that. I think it's connected, of course. It's a problem of scale. I'm talking a little bit more the problem of fear. I'm talking about the problem of fear.
But I wasn't talking about either. I was not problem of fear. I was talking about the upside.
Yeah.
The positive side is that if you were able to take a generation then,
I agree.
The mindless of that generation exists today.
But you need to have courage, is my point. You need to have courage. You need to have courage, and it's much, in a way, it's easier. It's
courage.
No?
No, you need to just reach out to people.
Yeah, but my point is...
I'm not talking about so much, first of all, I'm not talking about so much Bachrim, I'm talking about Bachlam, Jungelite.
Yeah, but even so, if you accept, or you give a gushpanke to, Chassidus being learned, let's say, just a stupid example, you learn Chassidus in shorts. You have an event that had guys in Florida. People are wearing shorts and they come together and they're
people don't. I gotta stand up for my community. I don't see people come.
Not North Miami Beach. I'm saying so. Okay, whatever. It's hot outside. They go to the beach. They have halal on Rosh Chodesh, and then learn Chassidus at the beach.
Okay, so the story that Marash with look at the Terem Med.
What's the story? I don't know the story.
Avram Kajambener, he had a Sheikh Chassidus.
Who is this?
Avram Kajambener was Grenim's Mashpia.
Okay.
So he was a Chassid of Marash. So he had a Sheikh Chassidus in Lubavitch Thursday night, and he described it at Marash. The Balabatim come, and he said we serve med. Med is like
the Russian drink. Okay.
Yeah, it's a Russian like a honey beer, something like that, served hot. And it's then learned, and it's ended at Marash said Lubavitch with med.
Oh, so the Marash was not.
Listen to the story.
Okay. Oh, I thought the story was over. Okay.
No, so he stopped. Okay, right. And in the Maimah Kol Eitz Muhammad Zibdav, it's a long. Arichas from the Rebbe Hashawa, there people in Shabas morning look at the Teda with a glass tea.
All right, I remember that.
Not very complimentary. Anyway, but kids, the next time, so Ranke went back, and he said, "That's it, guys. It's not appropriate." So they stopped the med. And the next time he came to Lubavitch, the Marash asked him, "How's this shit going?" He said, "Listen, people don't come for the med, but
it helps.
But it helps.
They stay for the med.
They stay for the med. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, but kids, the attendance dropped off.
Right.
So the Marash told him, put it back.
Interesting.
Okay.
That's very interesting. But that's a very interesting story because.
Okay, so swap out the med for a chveis.
That's my point.
For Coca-Cola.
That's my point.
I don't think that I've been saying this for a long time that herring and pickles is not any more chassidish than pizza and.
No, it's not. It's just more nostalgic and romantic.
Yeah, because that's what they eat then.
Right. And it's what we don't eat now, so we don't associate it with our own.
But they did eat it then.
Of course.
It was.
Of course, they enjoyed and they enjoyed it then the same way you enjoy a slice of pizza.
I have to tell you a story that I heard it from somebody that I experienced it myself.
But herring is also better for mashke than pizza. Let's be honest. No, it's not true.
I wouldn't know.
All right, fair. No, it's fatty and it's oil.
So when I drink mashke, I drink enough that a herring would make a difference.
All right.
And
Badal.
At this point, yeah. So I was in Russia. This was in the late 90s. The last time I went was 2004. They were doing the public zdarim and they had like...
you went as a bacher.
Yeah, they had like 100 bachrim going, or 500 bachrim going.
Yeah.
Remember those days? So...
I was at the tail end, but I had my own exotic destination to go home to.
It's mamish nice this time of year. But the video Embers came out from
I remember.
And this was the last time when planes still had the big screens. At the time.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we asked.
Now we're feeling old over here.
Yeah, and we asked them to play Embers on the video, on the public thing they did.
It was on Aeroflot?
Delta Airlines, whatever it was. No, it wasn't Aeroflot. I think it was Delta. And they played it. It was very, very nice.
Kibush.
Yeah, kibush. Yeah, davening and the things. Yeah. But Kitzer, so I'm trying to remember where I saw it. It wasn't in Moscow, but I was walking one night and I see two guys standing under a lamppost, older guys, having, I wish I could give you the tzir, like this,
Two Russian guys.
Two Russian guys looked lahavda like two bachram on Kingston Avenue, 3 a.m. on a Thursday night in the middle of Tevis.
Right.
It looked exactly the same.
Right.
I don't think they were discussing, if Stalin was good or bad or whatever it was. They were older guys. They were drunks. They were alcoholics. But I got like a reality check about what's going on over here. That these mannerisms, whatever, they're just Russian. They're not Chassidish.
Oh, yeah.
Hello. There's nothing wrong. It's nice. I'm Russian through and through.
Where do you think the drinking mashke comes
from? Yeah. I'm saying von aller Seiten.
By the way,
and I love Russia and I love Russianism, etc.
For sure.
All 16 great grandparents are all from there.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of things like that. I mean, even for example, the minhag to not dress up the sukkah.
Yeah.
From what I understand, there is another group of Chassidim, I forget the name, that also doesn't dress up the sukkah.
Or the Russian Chassidim.
Yeah, they're also, and it's like, Tzad Shabas Behem is that it was freaking cold on Sukus. Right? And it's like, there are a lot of things that are just...
Oh, it was pretty cold in Poland too.
Oh, it was colder in Russia, come on. And okay, so that's a little bit more cynical.
No, but that's cynical, but also the whole halachilach. I was actually talking to somebody.
No, but the drinking mashke and the whole thing, like unter den Tisch, that's what the players are doing. And there's a reason why people in Russia were always drinking. It was freezing.
Yeah.
Life was miserable. Life was depressing. You had, by the way, the czars that were running Russia, they weren't just anti-Semites. They were demented Mishkayim.
Yeah, by the way, there's a tape from the Rebbe where he talks about the last Tsar Nikolai. And he says I think
he was from the least Meshuggah ones, by the way.
Yeah, probably.
They were crazy.
So he says, du als kein größer Chacham nicht gewähnt und kein kleiner Chacham echt nicht.
They were Shigoyim, the family, a bunch of degenerates.
Oh, they were inbred degenerates.
Inbred degenerates, killing each other all day. I was reading a biography of it, of the whole Romanov family. A band of Shigoyim. Look, some of them accomplish massive things, but like as people, they're pushing nuts, and you're living under their thumb. And one of the things the guy writes, which is also go back to Lubavitch mannerism, this historian writes, is that there was this culture developed in Russia where you display servility like avdos, and like to the person on top of you, and complete tyranny to the person underneath you. And it's like, hello.
Why does that sound so familiar?
Right? Like, yeah, exactly. Like maybe that's how we've sadly Oizgetayt Bittel. Like we have a very Russian Taitcha Bittel, where Bittel is all about destroying and servility.
And the stories that we were told and
servility, like the culture that we've inherited, a lot of it has Russian mannerisms, and many of it, some of it is good, and some of it's time to move on. Like
it's not just time to move on. I was telling you before. That's bechlal not what Chassidus is about. Like if you go back to the Memorim and read what it's really saying, it's none of that.
Right.
It's none of that. Well, a pet peeve that I have.
So what is it about? 1 second. What is it about?
Chassidus is about the Sukus. Chassidus is about Yichud. Chassidus is about the Neshama. It's none of the above.
You're saying it's not Musar, you're saying? It's not
Musar, it's not Brechen Stechen, it's a total mismatch. I'll tell you a pet peeve, and I have to say this.
Okay.
Because it's really something that I...
No, this is a podcast all about pet peeves.
Yeah. About people hearing what they want to hear. And it took me a very long time over the years. Barry Farkas touched on this. He didn't touch on it. It was a big theme of his podcast. To reorganize my brain. But going to different Fabringens as a Bacher and then later as a Ingeman and hearing people talk. And for some reason, extremism has a nature of rising to the top.
Yeah.
People the loudest say the most extreme things. And
because they're the most unbendable.
Yeah. So you get this point of brechen and stechen and harshness,
right,
and unsatisfied. I'm going to give you 2 examples because they talk to me. So if I bring about this often, and today it's a different world. We used to have the cassettes of the Rebbe's Fabringens.
I remember.
So Bachram had like these collections. So you had my set up, was obviously stories, but then you had like the secret collections.
Yeah.
Collection of when the Rebbe spoke about the different machliks that were going on with other groups, etc.
Right.
And the Rebbe expressed himself very harshly sometimes.
Right.
And there was some heavy stuff. And people had collections of those. And one day it occurred to me, there's over 6,000 hours of recorded Fabringens.
Right.
And if you take all the times that Rebbe spoke harshly together, put them all together, I doubt it reaches more than 6 hours altogether. I'm just 6 times 60.
6 times... No, 6 times 100, 6 times...
60. It's a few minutes here, a few minutes there.
So, you're saying in minutes? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 3,600 minutes.
I don't think there's 360.
No, it's 360 minutes.
I don't know if there's 360 minutes by Fabringens that Rebbe spoke harsh.
Yeah.
And for some reason, out of all the 6,000 hours, that's your like secret collection. And when the Rebbe said things like Shana Rabbe Tavshin on Beis, as the other Yid Kaman of an Admar, very famous thing. Then the Rebbe was just talking. Then he was just. Then he didn't really mean it. What are you
referring to?
Shana Rabbe Tavshin on Beis.
What happened?
Very, very long sicha. The Rebbe spoke a sicha every night of Sukus.
Right.
So Shana Rabbe, I believe, is almost 2 hours.
Right.
This is in the Mukadik sicha.
Right. What did he say?
And the Rebbe was speaking about the Tzemach Tzedek, the Bnei Tzemach Tzedek.
Right.
And that the Friedrich Rebbe said to write when he was preparing Ayim Yom, I'm conflating 2 things here, but I know that the Rebbe said that he should write Quick L'Jose, and then even Rebbe on each one of the Tzemach Tzedek.
So even couples, even...
Yeah. It's actually even later. Somebody once showed me about, asked me recently about Retzah and and the Rebbe said then, one of the eras that the Rebbe took out was that Yeda Yid came out from B'Shem Admar. This is in the Mugadik Sicha.
Right.
And for some reason, when the Rebbe says something like that, it's like, How
do you understand it?
How do I understand it? I'll talk about it in a minute how I understand
it.
But
I'll give you, so I say, and the Rebbe spoke like that many times, that style, Yadi Yid, Halpat Shuvei Allah. Or take any Maimon, that's what I mean specifically.
I see the point you're making.
When the Rebbe is talking about, when the Rebbe is saying as he sees it, what's really going on, that he doesn't mean. And the one time that he said something, now he said, and all the excuses, so they that Menander, I don't know what kind of BS that is. So the example I always give is, you have Ashrei.
Right.
And Ashrei is an olive base. And each pasuk is divided by two. So there's 22 psukim over there. Well, 21 because there's no nun.
Right.
And each pasuk is divided in two. There's 42 phrases over there.
Right.
Out of 42 phrases over there is Veskal Hashem Yashmid. Is the only negative phrase in the whole Ashrei.
Right.
And for some reason, that's all you're going to notice.
Right.
And the other 41 is admonished. It's
like they say in democracy, hate of the opponent is what wins you elections.
Yeah.
Because hate is a stronger motivator than love.
Yeah.
And there's something, I think Chassidus also talks about this now that you're talking about it. There's something about mius is more powerful than, it's a more powerful.
They say in advertising that people seek to avoid pain.
Right.
Whenever you advertise something,
find the pain point.
Find it as solving a problem.
Right. Find the point. Find the pain spot, and show them.
So, but the truth is that it's not true.
Right.
I always make a joke, the 5% rule. And if you could do math, 5% is not a rule by definition. 5%, it's an exception.
I think it's also a problem of imagination. There's a famous line by Tolstoy, I think, going back to our Russian ancestors. As I understand, that he begins one of his famous novels that all happy families are the same. It's the unhappy families that have stories to tell, right? And there's something about where like negativity automatically has a shape, whereas like as a Shem Yashmid, you can picture it, the burning in hell, the fire. It needs a lot more refined imagination to like have that mean anything. And the same thing in general in life, right? Like the negative, it's very immediate and very visceral, whereas like the positive is like whatever.
Yeah.
And you need imagination.
Yeah.
So, but I see the point that you're making. The point that you're making is in general that we gravitate to, in a way, the very small part of what Chassidus is talking about, which is here and there, up to Shafavart, and the Rebbe is saying, and you'll find the Fidigav's Chassidus also,
and people will go so far as to say that that's what the Rebbe really meant.
Right.
They'll say that clearly. They'll say, well, all the nice things that Rebbe talking about are for the camera, but now, and then the Rebbe later. Now there's, I best mefragen, the fact is that the Rebbe did speak harsh at the Bachram, and they always said, that's a good question. It's a very good question. So that's what I'll say. I would rather say I don't understand the half of Pasuk is called Shem Yashmid, and the other 41 psukim make sense, than say no, this one I understand, and the other 41 don't make sense.
Well, I also think people are conflating two things here. Yeah. When I was talking Chassidus, he's talking about what he believes and what he sees the potential in people.
I don't think it's just potential.
No, but not potential in some abstract way, like what he believes they're capable of. Yes, and so in that sense, it's overwhelmingly positive. You could argue that, you could accept that, and also argue that when Bachram are coming by dollars, that if the Rebbe smiles the whole time at Bachram, like he's making it. What he's saying isn't that you're good and it's easy and it's over. What he's saying is, I believe in you, but I'm going to demand from you too.
Yeah.
Saying it's not a stira.
It's not. The truth is b'chal not a stira.
Right.
That of course not.
Right. Because you were bringing it up that could be a
I was saying,
stira.
but they have to unlearn the whole. And I started listening to different, going to different mashpim sabringas to unlearn everything.
Right.
To unlearn and realize how much. When Chassidus says nothing of the sort, Chassidus talks about the yichud of a neshama, of what a person is. And yes, it doesn't just come with it. It's much more than that. Right. It's in a reality.
Yeah, there was a time a few years after I got married, and I started going into making videos or films, whatever. and there was a project that I took on, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I spent a lot of money on it. That today I laugh at how much money I spent on it, but in terms of like how the world does things, it wasn't outrageous. And in my mind, it was like, okay, because I came from this like Chabad house mindset. It was this cool project. It was an inspirational video. There was a great story there. Let me go reach out to some of these Baal Batim that I know, and some of them had actually told me when I was younger, when you find this project, come to me and I'll support you. And I was like, okay, they'll give me the money to pay for it. I'm not asking them to make me rich off it, but to pay. And I remember that feeling when they told me, like, we're not doing it. We love you, but we're not doing it.
Right.
And at the time, it was very disappointing. It was also like, it was crushing because I had always in my mind assumed that's the guy told me he would help me out.
Right.
Like, he was a close family friend. And in hindsight, I know it was the biggest blessing because it forced me, maybe not in that moment, but over time to like, okay, how do I figure this out for myself? And what that did is it unlocks certain things in you. It's like, no, I don't need to just rely on someone else. I can figure it out, and that forces me to get better at what I'm doing, and forces me.
And you're going to do well. You are going to do well.
Right.
You're not.
Right. No, but it's also like you become a stronger person, right? You become a stronger person, and you grow, and it's hard to grow. It's hard to grow, and that is a challenge of any parent with a child, essentially, right? Like,
of course.
How do you raise your child into an adult without being too harsh, but also without suffocating them with love and helicoptering?
Yeah. But over here, there's an added element, and that is that there was a lot of talk, clearly, of like we talk about Russian. In other words, it didn't come out of nowhere.
No.
There was very, very overt talk like that by certain Fabreng and certain other people who, Baruch Hashem, today it's not so popular anymore.
I'm not trying to gaslight you.
No. No, I understand that. No, I'm saying there was a lot of unlearning to do. That's what I mean to say specifically.
All I'm pushing back at, if I'm pushing back at all,
no, I don't think that. Doesn't sound like you're pushing back. Sounds like you're agreeing.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. It's just that, because sometimes what happens is people go to the other extreme. They're like, if this is all positive, then this whole narrative of the Rebbe being stern
it's true.
and disciplinary doesn't fit. And it's like, no, it's not a stira. It's not a stira. Like the Rebbe's saying in a Maimer what he believes is true about you, and that could be the most positive and empowering message in the world. But if you're in his space, you're looking at him eye to eye, and he like gives in.
I'll go a step further. This is just like a philosophy that I have. You have in davening, we say, the Gemara says,
right.
First you gotta. And a person could look like the Eberstein needs his ego stroke before you ask him for anything. Like,
right.
how does that work? Yeah, right. I don't want to talk about this.
Chassidus talks about this.
Zamaritzim. Yeah. Well, I want to give a different
You're
twist.
You're going for it, okay.
Yeah. And it's like a 15-year-old doesn't behave like that. I mean, a mature 15-year-old, the guy who does that.
There's our Russian behave that way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not a joke. He really did. And today you look at somebody like, you need a doctor if you need your ego struck to that level. The CEO like that is not going to last.
Right.
People are going to rebel. You're ascribing such immaturity to the Eibishter.
Right.
And what I think is happening is something completely different. I'll give you a mashal which I used for myself. Suppose somebody who really, really, really loves you, and 100% wants only your good, gives you a little package. It's not wrapped very nicely, and you don't know what's in there, and he gives it to you, and he says, "You're going to really thank me for this." What do you assume is in there?
Nothing much.
Somebody you really like and you really trust, and he told you you're going to thank me.
Okay.
You assume there's something good in there.
Okay.
Unless he's playing a cruel practical joke, which he's not that kind of person.
Okay.
You assume there's probably something very good in there. Otherwise, why would he tell me that?
Right.
So the way I understand today, the Eibishter says, okay, before we start talking, I want you to understand who I am. I am Hagadol Hagiber V'Hanoira. I take care of the whole world. I look out for everything. I'm Neisin Lechem Chalbasar Kelelim Chazdei. That's who I am. Now let's talk. So if you believe that about me, and I send you some packages that look a little funny, but if it's on the side that I'm only good, that Kichavetz Chesed Hu, then you're going to have a little bit of a different approach.
Right.
And if something doesn't look pretty, you're going to say, well, I wonder what he's trying to teach me here.
Right.
Unless you say the Eibishter is sadistic and he gives you bad things and he tells you, you must thank me. But we assume the Eibishter is not like that.
Right.
So if he's telling you harsh things, there's probably some kind of lesson here. There's probably some kind of... And I think the same thing, when the Rebbe is telling you, look, you are Yechidish B'Nefesh, I'm Yechidish B'Nefesh. Let's take that as the Yesoid, where we're starting. I heard this, that there's a Kabbalah by Chassidus that the Rebbe is a gutter.
All right.
That's I'm assuming familiar with that term. So I heard from somebody.
The Rebbe is a good person, or kind.
It's not just the Rebbe.
Kind.
The Rebbe is kind. The Rebbe is kind, and that is part of the function of a Rebbe to be kind.
Right.
Now I heard this from somebody that when the Rebbe Nishvasin passed away, Beis Nissen. So, I mean, anybody with half a brain would assume that the Frierdiker Rebbe is the Malamakim.
Yeah, he was the only Rebbe that was so clear.
That was so clear. It was a Ben Yachid, and the Rebbe Rashab left that tzava, and I heard that there were Chassidim that when they saw the tzava, they were actually surprised.
Why?
I don't know what they were thinking exactly, but they were actually surprised. The reason is because as the Manal Tam Chatzum, the Frierdiker was known to be very, very harsh.
Very sharp, yeah.
And he would throw Bachrim out left and right, and there was no Anachmanas.
Right.
And because they have a Kabbalah, the Rebbe is a gutter, they cannot see the Frierdiker Rebbe functioning as Rebbe.
So what did they think was going to happen?
I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking, but this day I heard the story. I wasn't there. This is going back now 105 years ago.
No, I understand, but there was such a story going around.
Yeah, and then we know that the moment the Frierdiker Rebbe changed from being Menal to being Rebbe, it overnight. Overnight became a Rachman, became like much before. That's the way I heard the story. I wasn't there.
Wow.
So if we take that, you saw that the Rebbe is a Gutter, the Rebbe is a Rachman, the Rebbe is Ava Rachman.
So we have to change our whole framework.
Then anything on top of that,
yes,
with that background, it completely changes the conversation.
Yes, I agree with that. Homesick for Lubavitch is brought to you by Yuvla Media, a boutique video production company servicing the Chabad and Jewish community. Since opening 10 years ago, Yuvla Media has pushed the boundaries of artistic and thoughtful storytelling in the community, with an insistence on there always being a memorable story as well as a beautiful and striking visual image that we believe is second to none. Over the years, we have worked with Chabad organizations around the country, as well as large organizations like Boni Olam, Torah Masorah, and Atzalathon, guided by the belief that your story is absolutely worth telling with depth and creativity. If you are looking to tell your story with a video, please reach out to us at hello@yuvlamedia.com. Again, that is hello@yuvlamedia.com. A link can be found in the show notes. And now, back to the podcast. This idea that we play this game with each other where you think the Rebbe is XYZ, I'll bring you this example, Ki'ilu, that proves that Snisha Pasha. Like in our conversation, you think the Rebbe is a good at this, and I'll show you an example, the famous story of the Rebbe demanding from the Shluchim, and the Shliach's crying, and Chalikov is bashing him over the head, and like you there are klalim, there are like axiomatic principles that don't get budged by your anecdotes. I don't care. Like my one is always, there was a smart man. So if your anecdote leads to stupidity, I don't accept it. Like it's not possible. Like, and even if it happened, I don't accept it. I know that might sound ridiculous, but like, if you're going to argue something like it comes to yeshivas, for example, sometimes you'll hear people arguing insane things. The Rebbe said this, therefore we're going to have a yeshiva that's not functional, that's totally dysfunctional. It's like, no. There's no way in the world that the Rebbe wanted a dysfunctional yeshiva. There's no way. You could say a lot of things, Rebbe wanted the yeshiva to include. But that Rebbe wanted dysfunctional yeshiva.
No, I'm saying the way that Rebbe get frustrated.
Exactly. No, he wanted yeshivas to learn. He wanted Bachrim to be living up to the highest potential. He also wanted other things that made things even harder and complicated. He wanted Bachrim to be in the yeshiva that the yeshivas felt were pulling down the yeshiva. He wanted a lot of things. But stupidity, he was not for, right? And you can take axiomatically that the Rebbe was not, I'll give you even a better one. Stupid is a little bit, it sounds not bakovidik. But I'm not going to argue that I personally have a problem with cynicism. But I know for a fact that Rebbe was not a cynic.
That's something that I heard you say over and over again in the podcast. And there's 3 lines that I love that really hooked me. One of them was that Rebbe was not a cynic.
He was not.
You can argue whatever you want, but he was not a cynic.
Axiomatically, there was not a cynic, right? He didn't say things to make people feel good. That's not even a cynical thing. But he didn't. Nothing that he said was said with like some kind of with cynicism, like half baked or like this kind of like fatigue in human potential. Always believed in human potential, desperately believed in it, and like fully believed in it, right? So if you're going to come and tell me some line and attribute it to Rebbe that's cynical, I don't care if you have Mar Mekemis. I'm not accepting it.
Not accepting it, and there's a context over there,
right? There has to be, right? And like we have to be able to say there are axiomatic parts. So like going back to your point, like there are like. If the Rebbe is a gute, right? The Rebbe is a kind person, right? The point of Chassidus is not to make you feel good about yourself.
No, it's the state of reality.
But to bring out, but to elevate you but not in terms of self-help, but to bring out the best of you and the most of you, and to do in a way of kindness, in a way that brings out the geschmack inside of you. If you accept that as an axiom, everybody else with their stories can go pound sand. Like, it's irrelevant. You have a Maisa, and I know a person that was there. I don't care. It's irrelevant.
I'll go further. Something that the Rebbe would always say, and this is something that bothered me for a long time. And I said it once by Fabringen, and a guy came back to me. And then later, there was more of a story, but a thing that the Rebbe said all the time,
right?
And the Rebbe even told David Chase, a Jew is never satisfied.
Right.
The Rebbe used those words then. And you can look at it, there's a midara, it's called being unpleasable.
Right.
And it's very difficult to live with somebody who's unpleasable.
Yes.
It's probably part of a personality disorder, something like that.
Right.
And somebody could take that the Rebbe was unpleasable no matter what you did.
Right.
He never said thank you.
Right.
Almost never.
Right.
Almost never. Very, very rare occasions. And the Rebbe said clearly, and you could take that, the Rebbe was demanding, the Rebbe was saying, I believe more, I'll take it a step further. Is a direct quote from the Gemara. I'll translate it into English. Somebody who has 100 zuz wants 200 zuz. And the way I understand it today, what the Rebbe was saying was, you could come and tell me, I put on film with 100 people. Okay. And the Rebbe is going to say, so you could look at it, you did a big mitzvah, you're getting a big chelik in Gan Eden. If you're a chassid, you don't believe in Gan Eden, you believe in Dira B'Tachtayna, you're bringing Mashiach closer, and you get a check. Or you did a big mitzvah, and you did something wonderful, and we're going to give you an award, you're going to get your key into heaven. Or you could look at it like you just got $100. And I believe that everyone was saying, I hope you don't feel like you're doing me a favor, doing God a favor. I hope you feel like you just found a treasure. Because if you do, you're going to want more of it. In other words, it's not just encouraging Vart. I was saying, let's get up. You're coming to tell me, like, I'm not your mother. You don't have to come and show me your marks. Like, you just got $100.
Wow.
And appreciate what you have. And you're going to want more. If you really know what you got, you're going to want more of it.
Right. Right. And so even the demand is coming from a place of caring.
It's coming from a place of caring. It's coming from a place of ahava, a place of lichtigkeit.
Right. Lichtigkeit.
A place of life is great.
Right.
You realize you won $100.
Right.
You remember the end of Uncle Pinchy when he gets the winning lottery ticket? Like, you realize you got the winning lottery ticket?
Right.
Like, wow.
Right.
And I hope you want more.
Right. Right. Yeah, look, I think look, there's no other way to say it. I think being a Rebbe puts a person into a tough spot. It's a tough place to be in, right? There are many stories of the first years of the Nesius where the Rebbe suddenly finds himself in situations where people that he was close with beforehand suddenly were respecting him, and it seems like the Rebbe was not happy about that. Like there was he expressed.
It was part of the Mesiras Nefesh. I mean,
right.
We don't have to talk about the Rebbe's Mesiras Nefesh, but it was clearly part of the Mesiras Nefesh.
It's a real thing. Like I heard the story of Rabbi Baumgart, and the Rabbi Baumgart used to shake his hand, and then one day No,
Was it doeg?
so you heard the story,
Yeah.
and like someone was giving the hand, and Rebbe just slaps it down, and you also buying into this, and because they were close beforehand,
Yeah.
and Rebbe Garten, is a person that people liked,
Right.
and you're also now like, who's going to be my friend?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all, and you understand. Not that I'm trying to understand the Rebbe's psychology, but you understand the necessity that the same way a melech and these kind of, or even a CEO in a company, lahavdil, right? Where it's just about business, let's say, there has to be separation. This idea, this kind of modern idea of like we're all going to work without offices, and it's going to be like open. It's been shown to be more or less a farce.
Right.
No, in a way, those people are the biggest tyrants. Like Kilo, I'm like you. No, you're not like me. You're the boss. You own the company, and all the games that you're going to play to make it feel equal are not. It's a joke. It's a farce. There has to be hierarchy, and so that is for sure that, and like, yeah, and they and in a way. That is what's how you mean about Rebbe is instellend to Chassidus sein instellend.
Yeah.
Like that, but that's the word that it's saying. It's like logically they have to be elend.
Yeah.
Logically, there has to be such a divide that there's no way of bridging it.
Yeah.
And
that before you start learning is mostly
right. There has to. Right? You're not allowed to go to. You're not allowed to go to the mikveh. There are rules. Yeah.
So once you take those axioms of what a Rebbe is, and then take a maimer and take it, it's not about demanding or believing. I think it's much more than that. It's describing a new reality, and we're living in that reality. And a reality is also very inclusive. It's a reality that's very inclusive. I was talking to somebody recently about different inyanim Chassidus and Kabbalah and Teres Baal Shem Tov and the other Talmidei Magid, and he asked me if Rav Nachman talks about this a lot, about Averis, and he asked me if Chassidus Chabad believes in this also. So one thing that we quote very, very often is Makam Shabbat Tshuva Im Dein Tzedek V'Unim V'Chin Lamed Sham, which sounds very nice in Yiddish, but if you say it in English, it says that a man who sinned and returned is greater than a man who never sinned. I mean, there's no.
That's what I mean.
You can make it a little shinier and a little nicer, but that's actually what it says.
How do people make it shinier? They're about
No, use holy words like Baal Tshuva and forget what Baal Tshuva actually means.
I know Baal Tshuva and halacha is someone that Avera.
Somebody who did an Avera, which means that, and this is basic. It talks about in a lot of other Chassidish Sfarim, that doing Averis is part of the journey. That's the way it is.
You're talking about Rav Nachman mainly?
Rav Nachman, Reb Tzadok HaKohen talks about it a lot.
Right.
Tremendous amount. He talks about this.
Right. I mean, in a way, it's by definition, right?
Yeah.
Right. So what were you going to say?
I'm saying that what Chassidus talks about, what Chassidus talks about the whole person, because it includes everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right.
It includes.
So that's what you mean by inclusive.
Yeah. It includes the person b'asher sham, as you are.
Right. But you're pushing back against something. You're just pushing back a certain zeitgeist that you grew up with, a certain mindset.
I don't know how I grew up with.
No,
I can't even say that anymore.
Why do you feel it's so important? You feel that a lot of people your age grew up with this kind of.
I don't krieg to other people's heads, so I don't know.
But for you, it was.
I believed. Yeah.
You believed for a long time that Chassidus was. That there was going to be disappointed with you. Yeah. I do remember that now that it comes up. I remember there was a line that used to be said in Yeshiva a lot, that when the Mashiach will come, the Rebbe is going to call you in and is going to
it depends on all the nice things.
Right. I remember now remembering that was always the expression the Rebbe is going to walk in, and I think they made that expression once or something.
Could be.
The Rebbe is going to walk in. Probably talking about the Fidik, Rebbe is going to walk in and full house to what do you?
This.
Right, and so that becomes now a whole paradigm of you're living in constant fear and shame about, right? Look, it's
the Rebbe said, and also Tafshin Beis, I think it was Simchas Torah. I mean, these are Fabrengens that were shocking. I want to go back to what I started saying, and I don't know what Chassidus is. The Rebbe says then, I'll take Mashiach el Nekes Shabbos Rabban. I'm a cooked off a kind, that's Mashiach's kind. Do you know what I'm referring to?
No.
I want to back up a second and say that something that I gotta put in a plug for Homesick for Lubavitch because it was really, really.
But whoever's listening now already listening.
I know, but this you gotta leave in.
All right.
You gotta leave in because it was really. It was. I would say Kamayim Karam al Nefesh Hayefa, but it was a lot more than that. It was really. It was.
What's that?
It was a new phase in my life, I should say, because the way Chassidus started being talked about, and the way.
Oh, you're talking about the podcast in general.
The podcast in general, yeah.
All right.
Yeah? Okay. I just when I got hooked on it, I told everybody about it. So you got to listen to this. Got to listen to this podcast.
All right. Appreciate it.
I went crazy from it. So there was a few very, very good things that came up. I don't talk about specific things, but one of the themes that came up is this community that we're now beginning to unpack what the Rebbe said.
Yeah.
You know, and a number of guests brought this topic. Avishmari Brownstein, Eli Nash brought this up. Rabbi knew that the things that the Rebbe said in the urgency was actually referring to now.
Yes.
So in Tafshin Beis, like the Beis Sichos are a very touchy topic, as we all know. And
because of Mashiach.
He spoke about the Dover Pinson. You know, nobody learns it. Nobody learns it in Beis Sichos. One team doesn't learn them at all. Another team reads them. You know,
nobody studies them.
Nobody studies them, right?
I mean, it's probably a little bit hyper.
Yeah.
I think there are people that study it.
Yeah,
but
many. And not study like academics, and not like, but really take them as a Chassidus, because a lot of very, very heavy Chassidus in there.
All right.
So the Rebbe spoke, I'll take Mashiach al Terek Shabas Rabban, and gucked our kids at das Mashiach's kind, and the Rebbe said then all the kids should say L'chaim if I bring in.
What was the context? It was like a
himmeldik. Everything was himmeldik. I gotta say then about Beis.
You were there?
Yeah. I thought we were going to talk about that a little bit.
How old were you?
I was born 1980. So Simchas Torah Nun Beis, I was 11 and a half. 11 and a half. Yeah.
But you were old enough to like...
Yeah.
You were sitting at Fabringens listening?
I was sitting at Fabringens since I'm very, very little.
Listening?
Very close. I could. Now listening is, first of all, by the time I was getting older, the Rebbe's voice didn't carry on Shabas.
Right.
And Yom Tov, it simply didn't carry.
Right.
Secondly, when you don't understand something, it's much harder to hear.
Sure. Because you have to make up each sound. You have no context.
Yeah, I have no context. The sichos are very, very high. There's a few vachadike sichos that I remember very, very clearly. So, for example, I said about Teves Nun Aleph that I spoke then. I remember that and I knew very well what was going on, what the context was.
Well, how were you understanding it at the time? Like, did you feel the Rebbe was talking to you? Did you feel the Rebbe was talking into the sky and just you were present to listen to it?
Okay, that's a very good question. We could go there soon, and I'm going to answer. It's really a whole separate topic, and I thought I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
What was life like for a 12-year-old kid in Tafshin Beis?
We got time.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk about, go back to this specifically. And the Rebbe said then all the kids should say L'chaim, which I remember the kids should start a song. We sang Am Yisrael. Simchas Torah Fabring was a very interesting, before our kafes. Most of the Bachman Talucha.
Right.
It was a very, very, a very beautiful Fabring.
This is almost like a shtickle rally almost?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So what was the...
It was very small physically. It was very intimate. I don't remember if people before Kiddush or after. I simply don't remember. You got to look at the amount of that. No, people said L'chaim, so it must have been after Kiddush.
Right.
Yeah. So the Rebbe spoke about then about kids, mechanech kids. And this I don't remember from the Fabrengen, but I looked at the Mugadik Sikha afterwards. And the Rebbe said then about Isa Emes B'nei Shu Emes. And even though this was the Madrig of Avraham, but today the kids are holding up Mashiach. If you know how radical that is? That the Rambam writes that the way you're mechanech people with prizes.
Right.
And the Nashim Ketanim.
Yeah, he didn't have much trust in kids.
It's not just that was the normal way. That's the way kids were raised for the last since Sheshem Bereshis.
Especially the philosophy way is not. Yeah.
It's not just a philosophy way. That's how all our parents were raised.
Right.
Till very recently.
Right.
Comes the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says that's not the way to raise kids these days. And you should raise them to do the right thing because it's the right thing. This is the Darek of Avram Avinu. That the Rebbe says every child is shaykh to. That's not empowering and that's not uplifting. That's describing a new reality. That's in a different league.
And what was the explanation for that? Something's changed?
Yeah. The Rebbe says that very clearly. Something changed because the Rambam wrote it, or the Rambam was a Pesach, right?
Mashiach Tzaitin?
Yeah, Mashiach Tzaitin is part of what Mashiach from Dam Daf Naref and Degen is that we're living in a different reality. This is something which the Rebbe said before bringing. Now, if you want to talk to modern educators, they talk about this a lot. about not giving bribes to kids, etc., and teach kids to
So,
the right thing of its own value.
but that's an interesting question. Is that Mashiach Zeiten, or is that just modern behavioral psychology?
Well, why is that a...
Why is it a stira?
Yeah.
It's not, I didn't say it's a stira.
No, I'm saying because it could be... The Rebbe is saying that the reality in the world changed, and modern psychology just tells you how to... It's a kind of like modern halacha. This is the way people are today. I don't know. Modern psychology can't tell you how to raise kids 200 years ago because they weren't there 200 years ago. And it could be 200 years ago was right.
Also saying you understand modern behavioral psychology changing as a masuviv of Mashiach Zeiten.
Possibly, I don't know. I believe psychology itself is one of the Simana Dugula. That's a different topic for a different time.
Interesting.
It's one of the Mayonis HaChachma that Rebbe spoke about, like all kinds of technology, scientific. The Rebbe says it's clearly scientific technology.
But how do you know? I guess my question I'm asking, no, not how do you know? How does someone know where? I'll give you an example. I was meeting. Actually, I don't want to digress. Maybe I'll get back to it later. I have a question, but you were making a point here.
So when the Rebbe is saying these things by Fabrengen, he's not just empowering something. He's describing a completely radical reality.
Right.
This is the way it is. Just like the Rebbe spoke about technology.
Right.
And the Rebbe spoke about these things very, very clearly. He's describing a world. The Rebbe said, he meant something.
Right.
Now, Ilu Zochino, okay, now how do you understand that whole tkufa as a separate thing? You have to ask the people who set Lubavitch policy. I don't know. That's not...
yeah, but they don't know the answer.
I don't think anybody knows the answer. I'm being sarcastic. But I'm saying that...
So how do you touch it up? No one's going to come and touch it up for you. So how do you touch it up? How do you see it? So there is no right answer out there that someone's going to...
I think there is no answer. Like, okay, this is the answer.
How do you see it?
I don't know how I see it specifically. I know that something happened. There were a lot of major shifts in the world at that time. I think that the world changed. I think that the world changed and continuing to change. And how does that work with the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, etc.?
How does that compute with the idea of Kol Madaita de Rabbi? Like, was Rebbe talking to that? It goes back to my earlier question. Was Rebbe talking to that moment, or was Rebbe talking into the future?
Well, first of all, it's not a stira. Secondly,
something
that Rebbe spoke about many times, Teres Ames, which means something which Torah says, which the Rambam wrote, or Chveis, or Rashi, or the Goyen wrote, it was true then, and it becomes true for all time.
Right, but I was talking about an era of time here.
Right, and it talked about then, and it continues to be true to now. The coming Shalat the Rabbis were now beginning to understand what the Rebbe meant at the time.
Right.
It's true for then and true for now.
I see.
Now, could things have played out differently? Maybe. We're still saying the
Right.
So, but what did the Rebbe even mean? That's what I'm referring to. Not what he was referring to. What he was referring to.
Maybe I know you don't like when I take these philosophical detours, but to me, the interesting question I think about sometimes is, it feels like, forget about the whole Meshachist, not Meshachist kind of divergence of non-alpha base. Forget about that for a second. Maybe it's connected, maybe it's not. What I see as like something that changed is that, like, Lubavitch became almost obsessed with, I don't know what the academic word for it would be, but like this kind of it became very in time. Like, it went from being timeless, to like, this year this happened. It became very much like, not like, where do you see before that, like in Tavshin Lamed Beis, this changed, like in the world? The Rebbe said something different, maybe, or the Rebbe said an important sikha here or there, but like a new tkufa.
Well, the first example would be Bosi Lgani Tavshin Aleph, and the Rebbe said we're in a new tkufa now.
Right, but there was also a new Rebbe. So like that, right. But that's more. Okay.
What did the Rebbe say? Chav Zayin is in Tavshin Aleph.
Chav Ches?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did he say?
I don't know. What did he say?
But I did my work and now it's up to you.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah, but okay. I'm open to the idea of tkufis.
So what are you?
No,
what are you suggesting?
No,
I'm not sure what you're asking.
What I'm trying to get to is that there's almost like it seems like Lubavitch goes from being a place of ideas, dominated by ideas to a place of history.
I don't like dominated by ideas. I'm going to give you an example. Why you mentioned this before. I have a dislike for ideas.
The word ideas.
No, not for the word. Yeah, for anything. I think, for example, let's take a Goyish example. This year's election. I think what happened was that one party became too much a party of ideas and philosophies. Right. I think last time around was the other way around. The conservatives have their ideas and what freedom means, etc. And I think a party of ideas loses because a party of ideas is very elitist.
I see.
That's why, for example, I'll say it straight out. If somebody, what exactly is a reform conversion? If there's no Torah mitzvahs involved, so you have to buy into a certain set of philosophies.
Well, this is Christianity. This is a whole Shiloh Christianity versus Yiddishkeit.
So what if somebody's not, their brain doesn't operate that way?
Right.
So they're excluded.
Right.
There's a certain amount of, well, first of all, IQ, whatever it is. So I think it's inherently sheker if it's something which, and the philosophers said that people who are not chacham are like, they don't really deserve to live. Etc. They're only there to serve the chachamim, etc. But I think that anything, if it's a Chassidus or if it's a party of ideas, then I think it's inherently false.
I don't know. Okay, fine, fair enough. I accept that Lubavitch was not some abstract academics.
Not even academic.
No, but intellectuals obsessed with.
The intellectuals love talking about the intellectuals. They're like, they were self-appointed intellectuals.
Yes,
it's very, very elitist.
No, I understand. But Lubavitch was about the Pnimis, was about
whatever Lubavitch was about.
Lubavitch was about timeless ideals, and then it feels like it becomes very grounded in time and history. Like in those years, it becomes very much like this happened then, which was followed by this on this and this date.
Well, that's something that I struggle with a lot.
You see what I'm saying now?
Yes, 100%. Because
I'm saying
sometimes...
now, like, who points out that in Tafresh Tzaddik, this was a new, like, everything changed. Like, that's not how it works. That's what I mean.
Okay, I wasn't talking about that at all. I was talking about, to me, Tafshin Beis Sich and Tafshin Lamed Aleph Sich is the same.
Okay.
I didn't. Okay, so I gotta.
So what do you struggle with?
No. I struggle with something else, but you were talking about. I'll get back in a second. I was just pointing on basics because the Rebbe happened to speak about it then a lot. If it would have been Tafshin Chav Gimel, I would say that too. By the way, I should say that I struggle to find it. I said I don't trust my memory. There's a letter from the Rebbe I could not find about hitting children in the 50s. And there was a guy who had a temper. He used to hit his child, and he asked the Rebbe about it. And the Rebbe told him that, first of all, I don't know if hitting works in this generation. Now, here there's a Gemara Mufarashas that says that a father is supposed to hit his child.
It's a pasuk in
Mishlei, which could also different ways to understand that. But the Gemara says further that even if a child is doing the right thing, you should hit him anyway.
Right. Just to show who's boss.
Not just to show about to keep him on the straight and narrow. I forgot the pasuk Gemara. Gemara Makkos, where it talks about the Abba Makkos B'nai is Pater and Shlech Bazin. The Gemara says it clearly. And the Rebbe writes to him that I don't believe that hitting works anymore. That is very, very clear. And the Rebbe says if it's still on the occasion that you feel it's the right thing, you should remember that you're hitting a Ben Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov, which you could have seen that coming.
Right.
And if you still feel you need a hit, then let's talk about that. But this is I was not getting carried away with the years. It was just happens to be that I remember that Fabrengen. I wasn't what I was saying at all. What I was saying, I'm not talking about Nayat Kufa. I'm not here to say, okay, Act 2, Scene 3. No, that's not what I meant at all. It just happens to be one that I spoke about it a lot. I was just saying, taking all the sikhs in context. I mentioned Shana because that's when I spoke about those things.
Right.
But taking everything that I said.
I didn't think you said it, but you brought up something which I think about.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, what I started saying before is struggle is that I have a lot of zecharims from 770.
Okay. You grew up there.
I grew up there. My father was a hustler. Back in the day, my father bought his house in Tafshin Membeis. And most people were buying that on Montgomery Street, which were houses much cheaper.
Right.
And he paid significantly more to live on President Street.
And safer.
The house was pretty safe. President techniques, it was pretty safe.
Okay.
Yeah, but the truth is I had very few Yiddish neighbors.
Right.
I think there were 5 neighbors on my block.
Metzgers, same block.
Metzgers, yes. Yes, I had Shmuel Metzger on.
Yeah.
Had a lot who lived there. My father grew up on that block, actually. Because my grandparents lived there from when he was very little. But he
wanted to be close to 770.
He wanted to be close to 770. He thought of walking like from Crown and Albany. He never was going from Crown and Albany to 770.
His kids, you mean?
Today, people walk from the other side of Crown Heights.
Right.
But at the time, it was like, nah, that's too far. But he wanted us to be near 770, and I was there a lot.
Right.
And for some reason, I have a lot of very vivid memories from those times, and they're beautiful and they're very precious and they hold on to. But something that I constantly grapple with is when I bring, or when I talk to my children, and people ask me, tell us what was Tishrei like, what was Akafas like? And I have a lot to say, but to a certain degree, how relevant is that?
Right.
Meaning to say, it was very nice, I was there, you weren't there. Like what?
And we're not getting it back until Mashiach comes.
It's like, and again, it's easy for me to say, people who weren't there, they want to hear, they're desperate for everything, but we run the risk, and I know you talk about Solani podcast, we run the risk of getting stuck over there. And the message ultimately being, I know you spoke about this a lot with Mrs. Darren, I think, that, okay, so basically the underlying message is, you weren't there, you're never going to be there, you're never going to really have it. Right. So kind of too bad, so sad, sucks for you.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, that's what I was getting at, where like there's this thing of Lubavitch getting trapped in time.
Yeah.
And you see this kind of thing where, of course, a lot of it has to do with Gimel Tammuz, people passing away, and people, what do we do now? But there's also the sense of like, Nalf and Beis was the time, and now like, you see what I'm saying?
But Alpha Beis was not the time. I don't think there's a single person.
No, it was the Eish Ratzon, Ilu Zachinu kind of.
I don't think there's a single sane person who's going to be honest with you that's going to tell you that they had any idea what was going on then.
No, but in hindsight, I'm talking about.
It wasn't the time. It was a crazy time. It was a crazy time by any measure. It was a very chaotic time.
Is there a different way of looking at it? Because I think there's two ways of looking at it. The conventional way of looking at it is that, I mean, at least I heard this many times in Yeshiva. I don't know if that's, I'm sure that there's probably more than two ways of looking at it. But the way I've heard very often in Yeshiva was, the Rebbe was trying everything he possibly could to bring Mashiach.
Well, it depends which yeshivas you went to,
I didn't go to Detroit. So I was I went to Argentina, I was in Muncie, my Mashpia Mesifta was a massive Meshachist. I kind of got around, but I didn't go to, I didn't go to Toronto. I mean, I'm saying, not because I didn't, because I didn't.
That's where we ended up.
I think I applied to Toronto. I didn't go to Detroit.
Right.
So I was never on the extremes in terms of the yeshivas. But I didn't, look, I'll be the first to admit, I wasn't around everywhere and I don't know everything that people heard. Right. But I heard this from more than one person from more than one yeshiva. This kind of mindset where the last few years I was trying everything he could to possibly bring Mashiach.
But I think that's
throwing everything at the wall. So
there's a word for it when you're retrofitting kind of.
Right. Yeah. Right. So there's that kind of thing where
at the time there was a feeling that something major is about to happen.
Right. But isn't it possible that there was another way of looking at it where it's not that the Rebbe was trying to get it done in this moment, but it's more that as the Rebbe was getting older, there was clearly a turn after the Rebbe passing away.
The Rebbe used the word Nayat Kufa.
It's Nayat Kufa, and the Rebbe wrote his tzava then. Something happened, okay? You want to talk human nature, you want to talk Zinyan Ruchnim, I don't care.
Right,
but something happened, and we know now that things changed. The Rebbe literally wrote his tzava during Shiva of the Rebbetzin. Right. Okay, so it's also another way of looking at it to me is that the Rebbe's approach was, or could have been, that if this is the end of my time here, I am not going to wrap it up and tie it up in a bow. Right? And I'll be mamchash a little bit. I did a project for a family. I also can't say too many details. It's a private project. I did a project for a family who sadly, a family member passed away from Yana Machla in his 40s. And so he left. He was lucky to see a grandchild, but most of his children were not married, and he left a young family. And his family was very American. And they were very American. They're American. He was American. And, Derech HaMedina, he was passing from cancer, so it was a predictable kind of decline. And the minig here is that you start writing letters and you write things for your kids to open up at certain points, and you leave you kind of prepare for it. And he refused to do it. And his madrich, his Rosh Hashiva, sided with him. Although his Rosh Hashiva later told me that it was more him, and that
she was more giving us company.
And the family was very upset about it. And so I was asked to make a film about his whole life story, whatever. But a big part of the story was this. And I went to speak to the Rosh Hashiv, and I said, "No, how do you take a tight shop?" He says, "Look, this guy, he loved his family so much. There was no way I could put in a letter. I'm gonna put in a letter. I'm gonna take all my feelings and package it for with a bow."
It's a very American thing.
He's like, "What do you mean? I can't make life pretty. I can't make my love for you pretty. I love you so much that I'm never going to accept my demise, and I'm gonna go out to the best of my ability like a blazing star."
Yeah. Well, it's not just that; it's that they could hold on to the destruction of it.
That's what he's saying. He's saying that with time, in the moment, it's very hard, but down the road, they're going to pick up a much deeper love than they would have picked up in a nicely packaged.
100%.
And that was very touching to hear.
Yeah, it's funny because I was going to share with you a very similar story that somebody told me once also. So he was very upset that his parent didn't leave him anything,
and he realized later on.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think that maybe that's what happened in those years. I wasn't there, so you had a much closer seat, and you're also, I'm sure, much more familiar with the texts around those times. I've always had a hard time trying to understand what they mean. Maybe I don't have the context.
It was very hard to understand.
Yeah.
I will tell you.
No, even today it's hard. Like I read the Sukus and I don't get it, and maybe I don't have the right.
It's by the Fabringen. I wanted to share this with you before. So, Kronheit's Balabas went to the Rebbe's Fabringen the whole Shabas afternoon, especially after Chassidus started getting shorter, but in the early days it was a long Fabringen. Winter Shabbos, my father was gone. My father came home every Shabbos after Fabringen. My mother asked, "What did the Rebbe say?" That was a fair question.
But you weren't at the Fabringen.
I was.
But you would come back with him and hear your mother ask. Yeah,
what did the Rebbe say? Fair question. You said
You left me with the kids. You left me with the kids, yeah.
When I was in yeshiva, Rabbi Pekarsky, he was the Manal in Alateda. Right. So if you came late Friday morning, I was at a Fabringen. Okay, fair enough. That's a good excuse.
What did you Fabringen about?
Tell me something from Fabringen. Tell me one word. And you had to prepare a word for him.
Fair.
Tell me one thing that happened.
That's klug.
So, and I remember in the last years, I remember he had a very hard time. Like, what did it wasn't something that you could repeat. It was like, my halt it's in the hechste Zeit from, like, what do you say? The Manichim talk about this, Yassi Jacobson and Simon Jacobson, about how they prepared Hanacha, Matzah Shabbos, till they were able to
shape it into something.
Yeah, right. It was mamish like a Hod Pashut. And I remember Shlomo Majeski used to say Chazara for the Bali Tshuva in English, and he would try to he had to say something, so he had to kind of make heads or tails out of it and give some kind of tzir to it.
So okay, but let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah,
the Rebbe's talking, and nobody really knows what he's saying.
I think anybody who's going to say that they know what he's saying is
Don't we have to a little bit examine what that does, certainly in the moment, but also for years later, how the klal, because you're talking about a lot of chassidim here, who take the Rebbe very seriously. What does it mean that suddenly you know that you don't understand? Like, yes, I know you could always say that you never really understood the Rebbe, you never fully understood. But here you don't even have, right, like you're completely...
Okay, at the same time...
Like, doesn't it do something to you?
100%.
It messes with you on some level.
So I'll tell you, for example, Tishrei Tavshin, I'll tell you two things that are... I think I sent you a message about this, two very, like... I don't know the word for it. Like they disturb the whole Seder Shtalshalos. So I'll tell you two things. Tavshinum based kiyas. So between the Zdarim of Tashrag, when I was younger, the Rebbe would put his talis over his head. It would take a little bit longer time. And there was a hefsek. Tavshinum beis. The Rebbe ran through the kiyas. I was standing too close to the bima, so I couldn't get up to look because I would be blocking everybody. But I don't remember if I was standing literally 2 feet away from the Rebbe. In the bima, sometimes there used to be tables around, and I would sit on the table. My father was right there. So I don't even know if the Rebbe pulled his talis over his head. I don't know. I'm sure there are people who know, wrote it down. And the Rebbe, there was no Yisrael Balachash. The Rebbe just went straight to the tkiyas. The tkiyas was short. It went pretty smooth.
Who showed the Rebbe tkiyas?
I think Mental Tanamam, I don't know. I think Mental Tanamam was the Makri.
Okay.
Because Mendel Tannenbaum later did the Tkiyas moment.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it was Mendel Tannenbaum.
Right.
And I remember thinking, I was a kid, but I knew what was going on. I remember thinking, oh yeah, of course, Mashiach's coming. There's nothing to be misvada for.
Right. We're in the clear.
We're in the clear. That's it. Boom. Smooth sailing from here. Then came the first day of Sukkot, when the Rebbe watched everybody shake lulav. Should I clarify?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, so the Rebbe had his lulav and esrog.
Right.
The Rebbe would come in, I believe, 8 in the morning. The Rebbe would go into his sukkah. I think lulav and esrog, the Rebbe would shake outside, because later the Rebbe had a sukkah, indoor sukkah also, in his room. But in the beautiful sukkah outside, I would have to mention my father was.
He built it?
He didn't build it himself, but they got a professional furniture maker to build it.
But he was involved. Your father.
He was heavily involved. He organized
with
it.
the sukkah outside in front of
Yes,
Sandy.
yes.
That wasn't there all the years?
No, there used to be just a plain sukkah, but they got special teak wood, and he described to me how they got the a lot of stories how they got the.
And the Rebbe only used that for.
Well, that was the Rebbe's office
during Sukkot.
during Sukkot. Yeah,
He would spend the whole day in
he
there.
would spend the day there. Yeah, that was Magia Sicha. Rabbi Shapiro has a famous story. That was Magia Sicha in the rain. They couldn't read it afterwards. Yeah, but there was later the sukkah in the driveway, which there was only. And there was no doors outside.
That was to go straight from his office.
They would go, through the back steps where they came back from the oil. And then later they built in Label Gorner's office a retractable roof. Okay. My father built all three of them. My father was involved in building the booth by the oil that the Rebbe stood in always, and the stenders that were made, the Rebbe's various stenders. So the Rebbe would come, bench lulav, and then Mayor Harlick would take the lulav from the Rebbe, and they would go into the sukkah, and everybody get a line and shake the Rebbe's lulav. Make a bracha on the Rebbe's lulav. Tafshin and Beis, first day of Sukkot, Mayor Harley came, and the Rebbe asked him, I believe my father was there. I heard the story from him. It could be, I'm pretty, okay. My memory is finished now. I say things as if I heard them 100%, and I'm sure I'm hearing it correctly. And then the person I heard from said it never happened that way. Okay. So whatever happened.
As if he knows, yeah.
Right. No, my father was possibly there. I don't know I think he was there. Anyway, it doesn't matter if it was or wasn't. I just want to put that caveat in.
Yes.
My memory is no good anymore.
Yes.
Unreliable. Anyway, so the Rebbe asked him, Vu Benjamin. So he said in Sukkah, the Rebbe said, Vu. So he said, in the back. And the Rebbe hadn't given the Lulav and Esrog. The Rebbe didn't pass it over to him. The Rebbe would give it to him usually. So he clearly knew. So he was like waiting. And the Rebbe saying where, so he realized that Rebbe wants him to show where, so he walked the Rebbe through from the sukkah in the yard, through the sukkah in the chutzner, all the way to the back.
And everyone's shocked because they're not expecting this.
Shocked beyond all saying, look up, the Rebbe stayed. 8 o'clock in the morning in the chutzner in New York in 770, his guy's finishing off Simchas Beis Sheva. I don't have to tell you what's going on there.
Yeah.
And in the back, they rebuild it now. There's like a section behind. If you go in the Chatzar 770, and you have the bridge to the library, and behind there's like another section. There's like a corner over there. And the Rebbe walked all the way to there. And the Rebbe looked at them and said, oh.
Yeah.
The way I heard the story from my father, I was a little shocked. Like this is not exactly, but okay, this is it is. And the Rebbe stood there. And the first person to stand, so the way it was, there used to be a queue. Later, they started giving out, the last few years, they started giving out numbers. So people didn't have to wait.
Right.
You know, like when you pick in the store,
Right.
people didn't have to wait online. I think Mendel Futterfass was always from the first ones.
Right.
You know, what's the name? Shinish Gelebt. Zoshe Blumowski. Shinish Gelebt at that point.
Right.
And the Rebbe gestanden there, and all of a sudden the Rebbe stood there and watched him bench Lulav and Esrog. Now, the first probably 15, 20 people online, it was like, hey, no one's going to scream the Rebbe stayed. Right? So they were all shocked. They were completely not expecting it. People are sitting, bullshitting in line, saying, Tillim, whatever the guys are doing. Right. And then the message got that the Rebbe's standing. And pretty soon it became clear that the Rebbe was going to wait till everybody. I know for sure. People walked in from Borough Park and Flatbush. In other words, there was enough time for people to walk to Borough Park, give over the message that the Rebbe stayed, and people to walk. That was their whole morning. At some point, Rabbi Groner brought the Rebbe's chair. I think the Rebbe leaned on it. I'm not sure. And the Rebbe stood there. What I do remember clearly is that we daven Shachris Musaf Mincha. It was the only time I saw the Rebbe daven Mincha without a hat, except on Yom Kippur. The Rebbe daven Mincha in a talis. We ran home to make Kiddush.
So Shachar started later.
Shachris started, I believe, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Rebbe said from 8 in the morning, I believe it was 3 in the afternoon. You could look up the Imanim there.
For 7 hours.
The Rebbe stood and waited for everybody to bench Lulav. My father ran home. He told us to come watch. I stood there for a few hours watching the Rebbe and watch everybody. I was not bar mitzvah yet, so I couldn't shake Lulav. I couldn't shake the Rebbe's Lulav. I went there with my brother. And I remember we ran home enough time to make Kiddush, have a very quick Sukkah. We had to go back to that Ma'ariv already.
Mm-hmm. This was the first day of Sukkot.
First day of Sukkot, Tafshin Beis. Now, I remember the feeling. This I do remember it. There was a very confused feeling. On the one hand, it was like, okay, Mashiach is coming. This is Mistama from a great Gilui that I was staying at. People were speaking about it, like, what's Pshat? What just happened?
Right.
And nobody can wrap their minds around it. On the other hand, you could see it was a Machzah Neira. There was something not right about it. There was something, like, this was not...
Right.
It was not a joyous event, shall we say.
Right.
Now, in retrospect, the way I understand, the way most people that I've heard understand it, the Rebbe was, hat sich gesegnet, as they say. But the Rebbe spent time. The other one, which came completely out of character.
People felt this way afterwards. I mean, in retrospect.
In retrospect, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but at the time, there was this feeling like it's beautiful, the goal is coming, but there's something wasn't
Was Rebbe
computing.
smiling the whole time?
No, not at all.
It was very serious.
It was very serious. That was intense. A lot of people, because the Rebbe was staring at them, got confused.
With the brachas.
With the bracha. The Rebbe corrected people. This I remember clearly.
Really?
Yeah, you have to make the bracha, you have to make shechianu. It was a machzah noida. It was very, very intense. It was... Now, you have to remember also that the gem video is a little misleading in dollars because gem video is the highlights.
Right.
And interaction lasts 30, 40 seconds is very long. Average interaction with dollars was, I want to say 2.5 seconds probably.
Yeah.
I think less.
Especially for the Lubavitchers.
I'm talking about for regular Bachar, one by.
Yeah.
You could see, there are videos that sometimes you could see the unedited versions.
Yeah.
That when people were standing there, it was 3-4 times as long as they usually stand in front of them. There was steering. It was a very, very intense. It was not a joyous event. It was not. I don't know else to say it. It was very heavy.
Hey, you remember that as a kid?
Yes, 100%. I remember being like people were
So Barry Farkas wasn't the only one who felt that way. Barry Farkas wasn't the only one that felt.
He spoke about this event with this.
No, he spoke about dollars being like he didn't get the uplift that he was hoping for.
Oh no, okay. He has a very specific story with the background. No, dollars was great.
I thought you were talking about dollars.
No, I'm talking about this event, Sukus.
You're saying dollars was short, this was longer.
So so it was very intense. I'm saying dollars and
this was
I'm saying here people are standing in front of the Rebbe for way longer than they're used to.
And they're also not prepared for it.
And within a half hour, people knew.
But you
didn't go, you didn't great for a month for Yechidus.
Right.
From what I understand, the average Bachar Yechidus is probably also about 90 seconds.
Right.
90 seconds to 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes or less.
Right.
But Bachar who had not ever been in Yechidus, all of a sudden standing face to face with the Rebbe for 15 seconds, whatever it is, it was way, way longer. My point is that it was, here you have on the one hand, Atot Kom Mashiach.
Right.
And then you have this event. And the other thing, which then I wasn't confused. And it was a heavy feeling, but I was like, but it's beautiful. I put it together with the Yisvada Balachash, that Mashiach is coming. There was one thing that literally blew me out of the water. That was when Mrs. Lapine was killed.
That was also Nun Beis?
Yes, that was Adonam Beis a few weeks before Chavzayin Adar.
I thought it was earlier. Okay.
No,
I believe you. No, I believe you.
And the Rebbe said in something which I wasn't even 12 yet, and it blew me out of the water.
Well, like one of the weekday sichas.
Yeah, it was a sicha at, I believe it was the end of Shiva, and her children came, said Kaddish. I'm confused. This is a Mugadik sicha, you can look it up.
Right.
It has a date over there. Or it could be it's a combination of different things. And the Rebbe said that her children would grow up knowing that their mother was killed like Kiddush Hashem. And as a child, almost 12, like, what?
You're saying, why
did you just say what I think you said?
Kiddush Hashem?
That the children would grow up knowing that their mother died?
You're saying, is Mashiach coming?
Is Mashiach coming out that? Whoa, where did that come from? That came out of left field. And that was shocking.
And the Rebbe said over there, if
Was that something
Agula,
did people pick up on that?
I gotta believe that anybody picked up on it. I didn't speak to anybody. I gotta believe people picked up on it immediately. It's hard for me to imagine people didn't pick up on it.
So how did you process it?
I didn't.
You were confused.
I did not process it. Until today, I look at it like you would not believe. You didn't even think it was the bass.
No, that's because
I'm saying you'll see that sikha, and you will not believe that this isn't the same.
I
see like the video of Nalaf and Bays, and then like the other video of the riots, the Crown Heights riots, and someone who didn't grow up there, it just boggles my mind.
Nah, the riots didn't boggle my mind.
No, I know, but for me, but for me, from some like, it's just to me, it boggles my mind how like there was this on one hand this sense of Adat Kum Mashiach, on the other hand, like utter chaos.
Okay, the Meshuggah Welt, is the world any more normal today?
Oh, come on. When was the last time you saw horses patrolling Kingston Avenue?
We used to see horses, sometimes police horses.
It was crazy.
It was crazy, but it wasn't a stira to anything. That was because a couple of guys are going crazy over there.
I see.
So as long as it's Meshuggah machen. There's murders. There's a Labor Day parade every Sunday, which, by the way, today is very, very tame. Right. Every year.
Yeah.
Every year there's murders over there. Okay, Max Klarish over there. God bless them.
Come on, you're diminishing a little bit, but I hear you.
No. It was very clearly. It was a pogrom. Crown was very effective.
Yeah, so a pogrom, Adat Kum Mashiach, they go together.
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting.
100%. Is
terrorist
attacks a stira?
No, because I was talking to Sukus about how the world's getting better and the Soviet Union's
so
falling,
it could be,
and everything's trending in the right direction.
I know, but in
the global world,
in the global world, that doesn't mean that somebody's not going to get mugged.
Yeah, but Crown Heights, where you're talking,
is Crown Heights was always crazy. It wasn't upside down. The riots at the end of the day was what boiled over. I grew up as a kid. Don't walk on Albany Avenue yourself.
But it doesn't change my question though. Like I was talking in the Welt,
yes,
and you're living.
You're asking now a theoretical question, but at the time it didn't bother me.
You're saying because you took it for granted. This is
Crown Heights.
Fascinating. Yeah, but I guess the lasting question that I would ask, like I think, like the lasting impact is very, very important. I think. I mean, we have to be able to ask this question: what does it do? Look. Let's take myself out of it. I'm ready to accept that I didn't spend enough time, because I didn't, learning non-alpha and base.
I can't say that that I did either.
No. It's not. We're not in the same boat here.
Right.
Like you could spend more. Like I could hardly spend less. It wasn't part of my diet really. I dabbled in it here. I've looked at it recently here and there. I didn't go to those yeshivas. I never really connected to it, and in general, I'm not a shalom. Some things that I know, and some things I don't. So I'm not even going to claim, but so take myself out of it. It's not about if I understand it or not.
I think most people don't know alphabet.
Don't.
I think.
No, but my question is. Let's take out
most guys on the line base.
But let's take the politics out of it. Let's take the politics out of it. I got enjoyed Iron Base. I didn't finish Iron Base, but I got enjoyed it. I can't connect to it.
It's very difficult.
It's Kabbalah. I don't know what I'm reading.
It's not Kabbalah. Have you ever read any actual Kabbalah Svarim?
Yeah, it's similar to that.
Yeah, it's just parches.
It's just parches, and this is connected to this, and that's connected to that, and this is in this, and this is in that. It's like I don't know what I'm reading.
Okay.
Right, I don't get it. Yeah, exactly.
No,
I'm
not gonna argue.
Exactly. That's how I feel. So I never really got into it.
But I agree with that.
I never got into it, and whenever I got it, I can't really chazer words from it. It's not something that anyway. But my point is that take me out of it. Like knock on me that I didn't learn enough of it, and that I'm an ifrit. Call me whatever you want. I don't care. Like I'm not defending myself here. My question is, what happens to a community? What happens to a group of chassidim when the parting words of the Rebbe, at least the Sichos, which was really, the Maimarim were just basically reprinted and re-edited, but like the Sichos, the words of the Rebbe, the parting words of the Rebbe, the spoken word is something that everyone understands fully, that they don't understand.
Right.
Like that, we have to be able to ask a question of, how do we proceed with that kind of, like those kind of marching orders, that kind of parting message? We have to be able to process it in a way that, I think that in many ways that encapsulates so much of the struggle that people are dealing with one way or another. One group will basically write it out of history and say it never happened, which automatically you're creating cognitive dissonance inside your Talmudim's head, where like the Rebbe's Halik, besides the Rebbe's Halik and everything is Teres Emes, besides this we don't know what it is, forget it. Right? Another group focuses entirely on that, and also is a kind of cognitive dissonance. Because what about everything else, right? And then, but whatever the case is, like, how do we proceed? How do you digest going forward? Like, what does this mean? What does this mean? Not what does the Sikhs mean. What does it mean for us to not know what it means?
I understand.
What does it mean for
the Sikhs the Sikhs is the only part that I guess you could put on a bookshelf and there. But if you were there, in other words, the Sikh is something you could see black and white and say, hey, what does this mean? But if you were there, it's everything.
What do you mean?
The not understanding, the toihu of that I used the word, but the not understanding what's going on wasn't just the Sikhs. It was, in other words, the drop mid sentence,
right,
wasn't just in the Sikhs. It was in everything. Right. Everything just like stopped mid sentence. The Sikhs is the only lasting part of it that even if you weren't there, you can read it for yourself.
Right. You're saying it fit what was going on there. Yeah. No, I understand. So what does it mean?
I'm saying it's much bigger than the Sikhs.
Let's put it this way. If you're reading a story,
let me go back. Do you know that there was a prevalent feeling the morning after Gimel Tammuz? Okay, so what do we do now? A lot of shluchim. Like, right. That's it. Pack up and come back home.
Right.
That there was a feeling.
I'm sure there was a feeling.
There was, like, we were there. The Rebbe sent us on a mission.
Right. This wasn't part of the plan.
It's not just it wasn't part of the plan. It's okay. So it's over.
Right.
It's over. And then, like any good chassid said, was all the Rebbe gesagt. You know, and we knew pretty much clearly was all the Rebbe gesagt.
But I feel like, okay, so you're saying this was the same thing? I don't feel like it's the same thing.
No. The solution over there was much simpler. The solution was very, very simple because everybody knows exactly what the Rebbe was
Exactly.
The solution was very simple.
In a way. In
other words, the suffix lasted maybe all of 72 hours.
In a way, the answer that they had after Gimel Tammuz is what led to Nun Aleph and Nun Beis kind of, for many people, receding into the distance.
Possibly,
we're like, we don't understand, but we know this, so we're going to focus on this.
This was very easy.
It's a famous speech that Baruch Shem gave in 770, where like now it's all about shlichus. Like it's online everywhere, right? And there was like, I think at the Shleishim or maybe it was the arts. I think it was the Shleishim, and he's bringing there, and like it's all about shlichus. Like there's one vadai here, and we're gonna throw everything on this vadai, and everything else we don't know what it means, right? But now that we know that you can't just, that's not a sufficient answer. I mean, I think most people understand that it's not a sufficient answer. Maybe that's how they dealt with the trauma or the grief at the time. At some point, you have to be able to accept that, look, you cannot ignore that. And I'm not even ignoring, like, is Rabbi Mashiach, not Mashiach? I'm not even talking about that. Whatever you think those sikhs mean, everybody accepts they don't know really what it means. So if you don't know what it really means,
some people are very sure exactly what it means.
What?
We got to put that out there.
Some people are very sure.
Very sure exactly what it means.
Okay, fine. God bless them. Yeah. But I mean, it's very hard to take them seriously when you see, like, on basis of what? Like, you're saying stories of how the people that are chazing the sikhs, the people that are the ones who supposedly understand what the Rebbe is saying, they don't know what to say. And they're constructing exterior or supporting narratives to shape it that's not necessarily inherent to the text itself. And then you start having all kinds of weird questions about, like, weird stories about Hagah, where they put it in there but took it out, and they put it back in, they took it out. There's all kinds of stories I used to hear.
Okay, I'm not even going there.
But it's connected.
I'm saying
people are trying to make sense out of something that is very, like you said, pashut, right? So how do we make sense of? It's like you're reading a book, you're watching a movie, lahavdil, okay. And at the end of the day, you at some point the book has to reach its end. Some books, they or movies.
Epilogue,
It's very soft landing, and by the time it's over, it's over, and it's like you saw it coming, and it's fairy tale. It's very nice, and everything's you lived happily ever after. Maybe the more modern way of doing it is that you go with such a knack that like you're left breathless. But at some point, it's okay. I get the story. I get where I got the story. I get the story, right? I don't know the end of this person, but I know the story. Here, it's like...
One second.
What?
So we're dealing with Yiddishkeit over here.
Right. Yes, it's not over.
No, in other words, not only is it not over, it's open-ended.
Yes.
By design.
That's what I'm pointing. That's what I'm trying to get to.
I'm saying it's like the story you said before. There's no love letters to.
That's what I'm trying to get to. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get to. I think like at some point we have to process, and maybe people have processed, But I think you're talking about the developing language. For whatever reason, there was this vocabulary there being very harsh, and with time, people are realizing, like Barry Farkas spoke about the softer voice. Okay, you could say he went too far. No, I'm saying not you.
Went too far.
No, I'm saying there are people. The figurative you. People could say, but there's an understanding that themes or things that got highlighted could be taken over by other ideas. Right, with time, things change. Well, you keep on talking about how your memory is less certain. Part of that, of course, is age, and as time goes on, things that you were closer to in terms of, knowing it are further away. So, but it's also an understanding as you get older that like your brain is shifting, right?
Yeah, it's more of that. My brain is shifting because I don't even know what
your brain is shifting, and so the way you see things changes. The way you see things changes, and so like you talk like it went from a very harsh, demanding voice to an understanding that look, the idea is to encompass, the idea is to include, not to exclude, right? And I think the same thing here is also that like so much about an Aleph and a Beis. I remember part of the whole machlekes in Lubavitch was, like you said, everybody knew exactly what it, like they claimed to know exactly what it means. And of course, because nobody knows what it means, so everybody had a different certainty and everybody's going to fight. But at some point, there's another way of looking at it where no, it's open-ended. There's no way to contain. The Rebbe is not going to like bring us home to a space of, what would have happened if the Rebbe would have said, okay, let me put it a different way. I remember I had this argument with someone, it was like a debate. I said, why didn't the Rebbe like discuss the days after more openly and more publicly? Like, he didn't understand that there was going to be a massive fight. He knew there was going to be a massive fight. But the tzava is b'chashoy. Whatever, I don't care.
The Rebbe spoke in public, the unpublished sikha.
No, but the actual tzava.
The actual tzava is very, Is very
technical. But it led to a lot of machlekes.
Yeah, because people are looking for what to fight about.
But he could have come out in public. He knew that there was no family that was going to defend it. He knew that it was going to be a fight between Chassidim.
Let me ask you a question. How would you visualize it not being a fight? Like, what could have happened that there shouldn't be a fight?
Come on. The whole.
It's not realistic.
No, but the whole yichi, not yichi, where every side thinks that they're right because they have hints this way or that way. He could have put down the line one way or another. Let's be honest. He could have, I think. I'm not saying he should have. I don't understand.
So one of the sikhs people don't like to talk about this. When the Rebbe spoke about right, and the story goes that the Rebbe asked Menachem to prepare for Haggah and they didn't want to.
Right.
I heard that story many times.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that. I mean, which year was this?
This was the same day that the Rebbe wrote Tzavad. It's the day after Memches, right?
Business in Memches? No,
it's not business. It was right after. I think the day that Rebbe got up from Shiva. The Rebbe spoke about it for. The Rebbe got up from Shiva on Tuesday, I guess, because Chavisha was on Wednesday. The Rebbe spoke about it then, and he spoke about it Matzah Shabbos again.
Right, and there's also the famous Chassidus with Agoch, and the Rebbe said to publish it, and they also refused to publish.
So the Rebbe spoke about the Chassidus Shalabonim.
Right.
And nobody likes to talk about it, and I mentioned it last year. There was a Gimel Tammuz thing, and I said, you have to talk about this. The Rebbe said, I'm sorry you don't like it, but the Rebbe said it is, that thing, yeah.
But talking about afterwards.
The Rebbe said what to do.
I'm sorry to tell you, I'm sorry you don't like it, but the Rebbe said very, very clearly, and the Rebbe said, I want to say it over, that there shouldn't be any makom safek. I learned the Sikh again last year. It was mind-blowing. The Rebbe could not be clearer. He's saying why he was as clear as he could be. He said, I want to say it over again. You shouldn't say that. I don't remember the Lashon over there. I don't want anybody to say it. I'm being clear. I'm being very, very clear.
Right.
And the Rebbe said everybody should be drachsis shrabanim or gadol shapira. And the Rebbe kind of localized.
Right, but at the same time,
what I'm trying to say is,
at some point, the Rebbe was pushing a climax all those years.
I'm saying to your point that by localizing it, there was by definition going to become machlekes now.
I see.
There was not going to be one central authority. Then by definition, there's going to be machlekes now.
Right, but there's also the fact that even if the Rebbe was talking about it, the sikhs, the whole Nalfan and Beis was not
in
a person winding down.
Right, not at all.
Right, there's not a person winding down and getting his affairs in order.
Not at all.
Right, and so
it's funny because the Rebbe spoke about that Tafshin Yud, that you see clearly that this was the Rebbe's tzava.
Right.
Bosi Lgani Tafshin Yud. The Rebbe says clearly. It was clear the Rebbe's tzava. And there's one line over there in Parak Hey, where the Friedrich Rebbe says that that when it comes a person's time to go, the Malach HaMavis doesn't wait for you to get your affairs in order.
Right.
And the Rebbe said that this is clear that this was the Friedrich Rebbe's tzava based on that line.
Huh.
And I'm saying to your point that tzava is not to get your affairs in order.
Right. I wonder if with time, something that's beginning to settle is that there's no wrapping up this message. Like you said, it's open ended. That's what when I brought up the scene, like why didn't they ever like wrap things up and make sure everyone's already crazy? Like that's not how this works. And I get what he's saying. And I also think like in a way, when you take a step back and you look at like the 7 Rebbeim and you look at it as they were building this project of Chassidus. There's 7 generations, 7 Rebbeim. I'm not even going to the Kabbalah that there's 7 spheres, whatever. That's way above my pay grade. But there's 7 Rebbeim, and there were 7 Rebbeim, and they built Chassidus from the foundational ideas of the Alter Rebbe to what it was today, which is mind-boggling, right? And like, how does that project conclude? Like the project, like in some ways.
Well, how does Yiddishkeit include? Something that you mentioned a long time ago, one of the earlier episodes. You talk about living on the edge. How long could you? We have been saying now for 2,000 years.
Right.
And we still sit Tishvav. Now, I mean, maybe some people.
Yeah, but you say is not the animating center of Yiddishkeit. Wasn't. It's not.
But no, maybe it isn't. But first of all, we say 3 times a day.
But say there.
In other words, it kept this flame alive. That's what I'm saying. It's not animating. No,
yeah, there are paradoxes and contradicting.
No, I'm saying it's not just a paradox. I'm not just a paradox. Somehow, for 2,000 years, we were able to hold on to this message that one day we're going to be back.
Yes, but there's also, it seems like it was Dafka never the center, because when 100%. It's a center, you are in a way.
Then you're left hanging in limbo.
Yes, precisely. And so on one hand, look, there are some things that are not some things. Most of the things are way above my pay grade. Like I'm not trying to rationalize everything that the Rebbeim said. I'm not at that level, obviously, but I think there is a simple understanding where, like the end of Chassidus, the end of the project of Chassidus, is obviously the Rebbe Tachtenim, which is brought about by Bias Mashiach. That's what it is. Yeah. That's what it is. So in many ways, you look at the Rebbe's Torah, and it's like everything that was said earlier. In a way, like you're saying, when we began the conversation, the Friedrich Rebbe, there's like things are Bosi Lgani, for example. It's a fascinating thing where the mimer that the Rebbe bases this whole tear of their Shvi and some of the biggest ideas of their Shvi Chassidus, so to speak, are based on a mimer where if you read it, especially the first 5 sifim, it comes down to davening b'tzibur and kriyasitim and mata b'amuna, and it's like the Friedrich Rebbe is talking there. And the Rebbe takes it to the highest extreme, and it does it everywhere. Like every mimer is like that. Right? Everything is, this is only Sev Kalam, and then and you're like, what's this about? What's this about? And you realize on some level, it's just about the fact that when it comes, like, the way it ends has to be, it has to end with it has to end with, like, you inch your way, and then eventually you have to say, this is what it is. The final word is everything. Right? The final word is bizbuz ha'etzers.
Yeah.
Right? The final word cannot be, and this has been, I think, the heart of a lot of the things that you've been discussing here, which is, and we've been discussing, which is that, like, the Rebbe on one hand, you said the Rebbe is a gutter, but the Rebbe is also the sternness of these moments, because they go together.
Yeah.
They go together, right? When you're at the end, when you're at the edge, there's no room for moderation, right? There's no room for midid v'agbal. There's no room for everything to fit in a nice package. There's no nice packaging anymore. It's all or nothing at some point.
The challenge then becomes, but we're not all or nothing.
You're saying people.
Yeah. At the end of the day, talking about the it's a message that we give over, but like you said, it's not an animating message because we can't.
Right.
You can't live like that. It says in Chassidus about that. So when it comes to halacha, you have how many candles you light the first light of Chanukah. Is very nice, but begashmi it's the Eibishter could be saved with both.
Right.
You could light 8 candles and 1 candle on the first night of Chanukah. We can't. We're not nimna nimnois, so we can't do that.
Right.
So we could only do one way. We're limited, so we have to say halacha b'sham halacha b'sila.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the Torah and the MS is bli gvul, but we're not bli gvul. So how do we take the Rebbe's messages today?
Right.
The Rebbe left it, and like I said, every community has their own rabbanim, and every person has their mashpia, how to take it. But at the end of the day, we are mugbal. We
are mugbal, and I think it's fine to recognize we are mugbal.
I think that's a lot of the grappling with. You take all the basics, clearly Pashat and clearly Blikvul, and you go for, and like you said, when you finalize, you gotta go all out. But and the challenge is that we are not all out.
I think we have to look. Well, how does a yid work? Neshama beguf. Neshama beguf, and neshama is a chelik elika, living in a limited body. Chassidus is a infinite idea living in finite beings, and it's the miracle of Chassidus is the Rebbe's nishtalent, the Chassidim are nishtalent. The infinite idea of Chassidus can touch and mingle and feel companionship with the finite Chassidim, right? And how I know that I'm waxing poetic and kind of not.
No. This is.
I'm not avoiding your question. The point is,
I wasn't asking.
We have to like so much of, at least the way I see it. And look, a lot of people don't agree with me, and that's fine. But a lot of the distortion, and maybe you're not comfortable so much talking about it. I could talk about a lot of the kind of the crap that I had to work through as I kind of graduated yeshiva and tried to not land my plane, but to not crash my plane.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe landing your plane is a little bit too balabatish. Fair enough, right? The Yiddishkeit sound about like but you also don't want to crash your plane, right? Your plane has to fly, right? And I had to reassemble my plane in midair because the plane I had was crashing. Okay, and the way I dealt with it, and you could say it's a cop out. Okay. But I think there's something there where you don't have to fit the Rebbe into you, and like you don't have to like we can identify with the Rebbe without being synonymous with the Rebbe. That's a little bit my this whole talk of Rebbe like whatever. That's where I start getting nervous. Not nervous, but that's where I don't really resonate to it, because you end up in a place where you start. I'll give you an example. Maybe I'm beginning to ramble. It's getting a bit late, but as when I started in the video production space, I had all these ideas, and I had no idea what these ideas costed. I had no idea how much time it takes to get these ideas done. So I'd get fixated on an idea, and then I'd figure out how to get it done. And a lot of times it's completely unreasonable, not logical, but it was cool. Like I was just talking to my wife the other day. On one of the first projects I did, I decided that one of the scenes had to be a guy rowing a boat on a lake. The problem is it was April time, and to find a space near New York City that was open because they'd open only close to the summer. With a rowboat, the closest place was like 3 hours into Connecticut. So I literally took my team of people and we spent the whole day driving up to Connecticut to film the scene. I would never do that today. Why? Because today I know how much it costs. I know how much time costs. And I'm like, okay, good idea, but not worth it. What I'm trying to say is that when you start making these calculations ahead of doing something, you don't even consider the idea because you're like, I know my limitations. I know what this is going to mean, right?
Yeah.
I know what this is going to demand of me, so I'm going to, no. The Rebbe is bigger than you, Chassidus is bigger than you, and that's fine. That's, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, so I think, I don't want to end this off with one of my own rants, but to highlight what you're saying, I think that we have to we have like they ask how do we you're pointing to the bleakvul of Nalf Nun Bays or the necessity for it to be bleakvul and to end with an explosion. Bizbuz Eitzers. By the way, Bizbuz Eitzers to me is the most, okay, obviously I have my, what do I know? But to me it's like unbelievably underrated idea, underexplored idea. Like it's seen almost like some.
You know what? I think we'll finish with this, and this is very. You're talking about chazbing sinas with Rebbe. The way I was taught what Bizbuz Eitzers means.
You were taught about it because I don't remember being taught about it.
No, when I was a child. Because what happens is those years, the last prakim memches test nun. The Bizbuz is the end of Bosi Lgani. The Rebbe stopped running, but I was in first second grade. Yeah, but I'm saying was finishing the second cycle of Bosi Lgani.
Right.
Now I was a little kid. I was in first, second, third grade. So our Malamdim talked about it, but they just like one, and they explained to us the Mashal Bizbuz Eitzers because that's what it talks about. Then the Reminder over there, and what's Bizbuz Eitzers? So what we were explained that Bizbuz Eitzers refers to is the revelations of the Frierdiker Rebbe of stories in Minhagei Chabad. That's what I was told specifically.
And based on what the Rebbe said that in a Sikha?
I don't know. I could go back to my teacher and ask him but that's what it was referring to. Because, for example, if you look at the Burim, Chayil, what's Chayil? Every little kid knows the birthday of Moshe Alter Rebbe.
Right.
But nobody knew about that. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says in a Sikha, I don't remember what year, so you come in the Zeit, and can Magala sein. Now, Chassidim knew that Chayil was some kind of special day, because they knew that if it was Shabas, the Rebbe would say a Maimer.
So the only Bizbuz Eitzers that they picked up on was something that had been already revealed 50 years earlier?
Well, the Rebbe said it, the Frierdiker Rebbe says in the Maimer, right?
Right, but...
And the Rebbe talked about the Frierdiker Rebbe. Let's be very clear
about it. He did.
Always. The Rebbe told, yes, the idea was, that's the way the Bizbuz Eitzers was understood. The reference to the Maimer, how the Frierdiker Rebbe gave it all these Seidas that were in the families of the Rebbe, or Minhagei Chabad. The Rebbe, in the last years, from when the Rebbe started putting out the contemplating, Tafshin to Tafshin Yud, Tafshin Yud Aleph, the whole, where does Sefer Minhagim come from?
Right.
Because in the back of every Maimer, there's Minik Besarav, the whole Haggadah, we're coming to Pesach now. So what is your business what the Rebbe does? Nobody knows. So
Bizbuz Eitzers was seen as just the...
Oh, no. Oh, okay, that's what I understood then. 1 second. Now, my elder Zayda, for example, slept in the sukkah on Sukus. My Baba told me this. He was a Tamim.
Elder Zayda Lipskier?
No, yeah, the one I'm named after, Velvel Lipskier.
Okay.
No, my Zayda Lipskier never went to Lubavitch.
Right.
But my elder Zayda Velvel he was the same age as Beryl Rifkin. Mm-hmm. So they weren't Talmidim Rishonim, but they were the second or third class. Mm-hmm. The second, third Kvutz of Bachrim. My Baba told me that he used to sleep in the sukkah on the table in a fur coat. In Russia, it snows a lot of years. Yeah. Sukkah's time. Mesiris Nefesh. Because they were raised in Timchatun Lubavitch with Rebbe Rashav, Kalak or Chamura. That's one legacy we got from them, to be very, very frum. How should they know what the Rebbe sleeps in the sukkah or not? They weren't peeking into the Rebbe sukkah.
Right.
The Rabbeim did privately. They didn't. Now it says Shulchan Aruch, the minig in Russia was not to sleep in the sukkah. Nobody slept in the sukkah, not in Russia, not in Poland.
Right.
The Rebbe was in minig b'Niselu because it was cold. But Abach Matem Chetmimim, Ad Kedem Siris Nefesh.
Right.
Who cares if nobody else sleeps in the sukkah? So they slept in the sukkah. Then the Frierdiker Rebbe comes and says, at least the real Chassidish Yidden, the real hardcore slept in the sukkah. And I heard this, by the way, from my brother-in-law, that his father also in Russia. They came out many years later. They didn't know. So all these Minhagei Chabad, the Minig Beis Harav, the dates, all these things, that was Bizbuz Eitzers. Now, take it, okay, very nice. And you were asking that, okay. So
I mean, first of all, you're taking it for granted today.
No, I'm not taking it for granted.
But takes a step further. There's a letter from Yankel Landau. I don't remember what it's regarding. It goes, Lachis Rebbe to imitate the Rebbe was b'chlal nicht. He said, what the Rebbe did, we didn't know, and to imitate the Rebbe was b'chlal nicht kommen betracht.
Right.
And you know what Mekusher socks are?
The socks that Rebbe wore, the very thin socks.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, there's Mekusher socks. So we call them a bacher.
Right.
And we made fun of you, you're going to imitate the Rebbe. But B'sishke Rebbe.
Right.
So they used to take B'sishke Rebbe all the way.
Right.
So you don't make Kiddush the way the Rebbe makes Kiddush. You don't wash the way the Rebbe mentioned once about washing for bread with a towel. And then I mentioned that today even Kiddush girls wash with a towel. It was nobody's business what the Rebbeim do.
Right.
So the Bizbuz Eitzres is saying that you could that the Rebbe's been talking about Nachlas HaKlal, that all of a sudden the Achas and the Rebbe is becoming more synonymous. You hear where I'm going with this?
No, I think so. I think
I'm saying this. We're saying that this explosion that happens, the Bizbuz Eitzres, which all of a sudden the lines become blurry.
I see. Yeah. So
Things which are bli gvul, which are shaykh to Rebbe, all of a sudden become for anyone.
I feel like Bizbuz Eitzers is a sense of kind of tying this full circle. Bizbuz Eitzers is a sense that there's no more security blanket. Right? The Fort Knox has been cleared of gold.
Yeah.
Our dollar's based on nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's purely just, in a way, kol dalin gvar. It's like, it's pure just going out and getting it. Like, don't rely on there being, there's something comforting about you do your thing and they're able to do their thing and they know what they're doing. And it's like, no.
I think this is exactly the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm agreeing with you, right? I'm agreeing with you. And like at some point, it's like they're put it out on the table. Like, here's Nun Aleph Nun Beis. Here are things that you don't understand, and I'm letting you know that you don't understand it. You thought the whole time that you had this all figured out. You had a whole conception of where Lubavitch is going and what has to happen before I pass away and what has to happen. No, none of this is so simple, and I'm going to let you know that, which makes it in a way much harder, because now you're like, it's like every kid, like your whole life you're protected, and the one day you find out that like life's tough, and your parents lied to you, right? Like money doesn't grow on trees, right? Like they weren't kidding, like it's real, right? Money actually doesn't grow on trees, and no matter how much you're told, you learn the hard way. Right? And Bizbuz Eitzres is, we're spending everything on you, or we're giving it all to your hands, but there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to come back to.
There's no backup plan.
There's no backup plan. No, it's a very profound kind of.
Yeah.
It's a very profound kind of thing, and like in a way, you think of like something that I thought about a few weeks ago was like, everybody talks about leadership. A lot of times today, people are like, "Where's the leadership? Where's the leadership?" Okay, fair times. You want a time leadership? I'm not trying to defend leaders per se. But then you look at like a moment like Kriyas Yamsuf, and Nachshon ben Aminadov jumped in. He wasn't a leader. Yeah, a leader, he was a Nasi, but he wasn't a leader at the time. He was another guy. And in a way, the leader couldn't do it. Like, the whole point was to bring the Yidden further. And like, if the leader is going to a place and no one else is ready to go, they're not going to, like, it's going to get disconnected. At some point, it's like, it's all or nothing, and it's up to you, and the leadership's in your hands. I think there's...
Yeah.
And I think it's an upside down world. I think Nun Aleph Nun Beis is in many ways, whatever your politics are, is the closing statement of the 7 Rebbeim. If you look at them as one continuation, which I do, I think most people do. The ending statement is that don't get it twisted. You don't understand anything, right?
Yeah.
No. You're not comfortable with that?
No, I'm very comfortable with that. It's funny because a story that I hear many times, one that I was earlier secretary in Moshe Leibrochstein, I'm sure you heard this.
I heard of him. I don't know.
I'm saying this part, he always used to chazer. He used to say that, he used to have a secretary, by other kreisen, the Rebbe's personal mashbach, after he opens up his own shop, he learned the trade, the apprentice for whatever. And he said, I'll say the way he said it. He says with the Rebbe, wenn ich meine, as a chapshin im Schnitt, weiter sich im Ganzen. As soon as I think like I'm getting the hang of it, boom.
Right. Yeah.
Change the plan.
Yeah, and we have
to. But the truth is, like you say, just a reminder, you know nothing.
Yeah, you know nothing. And anyway, on that.
But I think the final note is what it says in the book of Ecclesiastes, save davara kol mishmas l'kimirav v'tzvosvayso shmerkes ha'koladam.
Of course.
No, what I mean to say on that note, at the end of the day, what is it? It's there's another nun basic in Pashas Nech that I spoke about saying hello to people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So watch it. There are certain things over there, and it's nun basic just because it happens to be. There was a time in my life that was very hooked on them. It's like what? It's in the Mukaddik Sikha about Gezel Zani.
Right. Just to be nice to people.
Say hello. Say hello.
Right.
Even to your wife and kids.
So how do you understand that?
Exactly.
You're saying, I think you're saying, make sure that you don't take the idea of things being so l'mayla tamadas as an excuse.
Not just an excuse. It's okay. So what does it mean? L'poyel mamish. You got to wake up tomorrow morning.
Right.
What does that mean?
Yeah, we have to live. It means you have to live like a mensch, but with the I don't think the word's uncertainty.
Uncertainty is a cheap word.
No, uncertainty is cheap. It's more living with the eitzers.
Living with a little sense of bligvul.
Living with the eitzers.
Living with a sense of wonderment. Living with a sense of that there's something much bigger. Like look for one of the things that I learned. And he asked me privately. One of the things I learned. It says in Hayim that somebody who's not a yeshiva, you see hashkach pratis every single day.
Right.
A guy asked me this morning about Shara B'Tachin. And he asked me, how do you live with B'Tachin? And I asked him, how do you live without B'Tachin?
Right.
You know, the Rebbe Marash says this, that today Parnas is like the Eichle Amon.
I didn't know that.
He says that, he said, that Marash says 150 years ago, that these days Parnas is a miracle.
Right.
Like nobody knows where your next dollar is going to come from. Live with Leisen Philosophy Live, understand you know nothing, and the program is so big.
Right.
And you could touch that bligvul a little bit.
Right.
In Nichayim,
yeah.
Wake up and learn a maimer, learn a line of maimer, say hello to somebody. Like, wow.
To go back to your vart of Mishiach Shleiman Eretz Messiah, which is a beautiful vart, that the whole point is to understand that what you have is a mana. Like to translate a little bit more, the idea is that, like, think about a person, a billionaire. Okay, when you live with that kind of money, it's not game over. It's game on. People are after it. The ambitions are bigger. The possibilities are bigger. You're living in a place where your mind can go crazy. You have to find a way, and not everyone's successful. You have to find a way to live with the knowledge of the possibilities and the danger that you're playing, the level that you're playing with, but also to live every day that way. And like the appreciation has to be that you're sitting with $1 billion. You're sitting with ideas that are life-changing and are world-changing, and you can't diminish them. But like you're saying, you just have to say hello to people, and you have to live with it. I think that's the point. No, the point is not you have to be a nice person. The point is you have to live with it. Right? You cannot live disconnected where you have these ideas. I know you're disdain for the word ideas. You have these ideas up here, and then your life.
This is exactly why I understand it. I'm saying this is the right place to use it. You have ideas.
Ideas up here, and then like your life is disconnected from the ideas. That the whole point is to somehow, from this conversation, I'm picking up a new idea of the Chassidus, like the Pashut Taiches. We're talking about the actual Rebbe and the actual Chassidim, but there's also an internal kind of personalized version of that, where a lot of times people have in their own lives the Rebbe part of their narrative, which is lonely and disconnected from their part of life, which is, also lonely. And the whole miracle is that the big ideas and messages that Chassidus is sharing touches and is working together with the day-to-day who you are, guy, limited, basar v'dam.
Yep.
All right.
On that note,
thank you. On that note, we have to go to sleep. We have to go to sleep. And if being it's a week before Pesach, wish you a kosher feilchem Pesach. And if this comes out before Pesach, wishing everybody a kosher feilchem Pesach. The music for this podcast comes from the album Repentance Doors by Oren Sor Nadav Vachar and is used with their permission.